Chapter 1913. Derivative of nothingness and primordial. These two words seem to have been on the tip of his tongue and in his mind for a long time. Over and over again, he thought about it, racked his brains, and tossed these few words over and over again. In the end, it was still the same few words. At present, he was the only thing in the void that could use these few words. This name was a race, and a big one at that. It did not include the branch races. For example, the human race and the orc race were general terms that clearly differentiated the individual form. Although there were hundreds of thousands of branch races under these two general terms, to be more precise, it could be divided into the human race and the non-human race. That's right, the entire void was either a human race or a non-human race. He was the latter, and the only one in the entire void, and it was something that had just been plucked out to form its own category. But to be honest, he still did not know what he and his race were. If he suddenly rushed into someone's face and asked, "What is a human race?" Well, if the next second he started to answer questions about biology and started to talk about the form, characteristics, classification, and whatnot of the human race, he could just toss it aside. Yes, that was not the answer he wanted. He just wanted to ask a very simple question. What is a human race? What is it? What is a race? Nonsense. That's why he did not want this answer. Well, the term race could not be further subdivided. It could be regarded as a term that existed based on common sense. When talking about the human race, one's mind would be filled with a large group of two-legged beasts running around. If one continued to subdivide the nature of the term, one would not be able to find more answers. Horizontally speaking, there were many other theories, but those were considered expanding the topic and would not be discussed here. He was just using the topic. Unlike the human race, which was a major race in the void that would pop up when it was mentioned based on common sense, the existence of nothingness derivatives and primordial derivatives was something that only 140 people knew about. There was no way to go up or down the scale. In short, they only knew that such a thing existed, and in short, there was such a thing. Other information and intelligence were all blank. Because there were no more clues about his true form, he believed that it was a primordial cloud that formed in the primordial era. There was no telling if it first condensed from this state of chaos before going to the void, or if it first went to the void and came into contact with something in the void that ended the evolution of chaos and changed its life form. He did not know since the topic was too complicated. As the only existence of a new species, there was no other similar species, which was why he could not observe more and study whether it could be considered a race. He felt that Mount Pear was huge, and if there were no accidents, his species would have gone extinct in the next few dozen eras, or even millions of times. In a nutshell, it was a strange inhuman being. There was no telling where it was born, when it was born, or even the conditions for it to be born. However, it was inferred that it was one of those things. However, if one wanted to further investigate its roots, such as whether there were branches, or whether the derivative of nothingness and origin was a species, or just a general term for a type of thing. In fact, there was nothing in common between them. I'm overthinking it. There was only one sample in the entire void right now. By the time he finished explaining the complicated details to everyone present, it was obvious that everyone expressed the greatest degree of confusion and dizziness. This was the same expression that had appeared on his face when he was first defined as such by her. Later on, they were even more dumbfounded to the point that they were a little numb and no longer in a daze. Anyway, they had been shocked all year round and were already used to it. They were completely used to it. Anyway, after he finished explaining, not many people could do anything other than breathe. Yin Nuashing even deliberately looked at the little angel with a little interest. The little girl was also staring with a pair of big golden eyes. She was frowning slightly to express her confusion, but she did not seem to care too much. Before everyone could react, she pinched him a few times, as if to confirm something. There doesn't seem to be any difference, she whispered, although he was defined as a strange species, but I don't feel any difference from before. She explained a little. Yin Nuashing glanced at Hui and the others who were still staring blankly and explained to her in a low voice. He said that based on the cognition of soul, concept, and order, A layer of mud covered my essence. For the time being, I was assimilated by that layer of mud into my current form. Well, that's definitely not the original words. I'll use my own words to make it easier for you to understand. In other words, no matter what I was at the beginning, after I came to the realm of the gods, I was a human for a period of time. Later on, due to the change in my life form, I became an energy life form. Fundamentally speaking, I was still a human for the time being until a large amount of energy messed me up. I was neither a human nor a ghost. I had become a pure energy life form. Not an energy life form, but a life form, a race, an energy life form. The layer of mud related to the human race was said to have been washed away, but it was not to the extent that the essence was immediately exposed. The little angel put her hand on her forehead and felt a headache coming on. I don't understand. Ahem. To put it simply, I was a human for a period of time. During that period of time, even if I was an energy life form, I was still a human. Look at Hui and the others. Their race was human, but their body was an energy life form. Their form of laws was still the form of the human race. Based on what we know now, it is the form of laws that determines the form of life. Hui and the others' constitutive laws and the source of laws are still the form of the human race's laws. So whether the form of life form is a material life form, an energy life form, or even an elemental life form, their essence is still human. Yin Nuashing paused and let the little angel think for a while. After nodding to show that she understood, she continued, "My layer of origin, the source of laws, and the constitutive laws are fake. It is a layer of mud used to disguise myself. Then, after I became an energy life form, I used energy to constantly change and renew my own laws. That layer of the constitutive laws used to disguise myself was washed away without me knowing it. At that time, I thought that I was in contact with too much origin energy, and the energy life form's law was too powerful that it even covered the life form's law." Seeing that the little angel was about to be confused again, Yin Noashing rubbed her nose and began to explain in a frivolous way. The form of laws determines the race, and the life form's law determines that one belongs to a certain type of life form. They were originally two balls, and the former was the two balls that wrapped the latter. I used to think that the two balls that belonged to me were the two balls that the latter covered the former, but there was no change in their essence. But in fact, it was the ball at the back that ate the ball in front. It was gone, melted, not completely melted, at least half melted. Ah, that's what it means. An energy life form is not just a life form. It is also a type of race. That should make it clear. Yin Nuashing scratched her head. These things were a bit of a mouthful, but it was actually very easy to tell. It was just that there were two different ways of judging. One was to differentiate race, and the other was to differentiate life form. Things that involved the source of laws were indeed very troublesome, but it was not a problem once it was explained. After understanding it once, it would not be complicated. That's understandable. The little angel nodded in confusion. She finally understood the cause and effect. Her own understanding was misguided, but after being destroyed by the heavenly god of origin, it became much clearer. The overall process was basically, she firmly believed that she was a human. After coming into contact with too much origin energy, she felt that she had become an energy life form and not a human. In fact, she was not a human from the beginning to the end. That's right, that's what it meant. But why would she appear in the form of a human after descending to the divine realm? Humans are the largest race in the void, be it in terms of appearance or life form. The human form and the human race are more numerous. This is determined by the heavenly god of origin and the others. After all, they were the ones who steadily created the void of order. This is the trend of the void of order, although they are not humans themselves. That's probably the reason why there are so many branches of the human race in the void. The little angel nodded and reached out to pinch his cheeks. But I still don't feel anything different. Well, that's how it is. My true nature as a derivative of nothingness and origin has yet to be exposed. I'm still covered in that layer of mud I mentioned earlier. My current nature is an energy life form constructed from the principles of origin energy and origin. Apart from the fact that I can't make these two elements form the source of origin and turn my source of origin into an energy life form, on the surface, I appear to be an energy life form pieced together by them, with the principles of order and origin as the framework, and the origin energy as the essence. As she spoke, Yin Nuoxing's expression showed that she did not know whether to laugh or cry. That's why I've become strange. I'm neither human nor ghost. Until now, I've discovered that even the framework of my energy life form is temporarily set. My essence has not been discovered yet, and it's quite troublesome to discover it. Troublesome means to find out your essence. The little angel blinked. How do you do that? Oh, that. She asked me to run naked into the origin environment. The little angel was speechless. Ahem, that's just an embellishment. She wants my soul and consciousness to go into the origin environment and try to feel it, but will take a long time. She wants me to personally feel the origin environment. Well, I can't really say. Anyway, it seems quite troublesome. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head in distress. But I heard that it's necessary. If I can figure out what I am as soon as possible, I don't want the root of my structure to be affected. The root of the tree is affected by the crown of the tree. Something like that. Ahem. Hui suddenly coughed dryly, startling the two who had been whispering to each other. When they turned their heads, they saw that Hui was already 1 meter away from them, looking at them with a smile. Although his face was a little dark, he said, "Can you not whisper these important things in front of us?" Yin Nuoxing shrugged. "I see that you are still confused, and I don't want to wait until you are done being confused, so I can only—" Ahem. Well, that means... So, you have come back to your senses? Oh, I think I understand, but I'm still a little confused. Brother Feng, what are you now? Sui Feng scratched his head and grimaced. I just said, a derivative of nothingness and origin. Oh, I know, but that's a saying of a big race. Is there anything more specific? I don't know. I don't know what I am either. Anyway, I'm not a human. I'm not a human from head to toe. Yin Nuoxing shrugged. Being born in the origin environment is enough to give me a headache. Now, I have to go back and find out what I am. Sigh, at least it's a path. Actually, I'm already lucky to have found this path. He suddenly took a deep breath and revealed a helpless and conflicted smile. It's a long, long journey of tracing back. To be able to make a breakthrough in such a short period of time, and perhaps to truly understand what I am. Actually, I'm already very satisfied. Since there's already a path to follow, I only need to walk down it step by step and uncover the things hidden in front of me. You knew that you were a little weird from the start, so you've been looking for the origin of yourself? We looked at him curiously. I've never heard you say that, because I don't have a clue. Besides, I already knew that I was a weird thing when I first arrived in the realm of the gods. I just didn't have a clue, so I didn't pay attention to it. I wasn't born by a mother asterisk cur, so I didn't go through that process. I just descended into the realm of the gods alive, and my memories of that descent are still blurry. Later on, when I learned about the truth of life, I naturally became suspicious of my strange appearance. Everyone, that was a very strong argument. So, after that, you have been wandering around the realm of the gods. Occasionally, you would suddenly come to me to talk about race. In fact, it's because Hui suddenly remembered the past in the realm of the gods. He seemed to understand the conversation that he did not understand at that time. Maple's answer also confirmed his thoughts. After all, you're a guardian. Your cognition is different from mine. I want to talk to you and see if you knew about some strange life forms. But at that time, I still didn't have a clue. Hearing his sigh, the little angel squeezed his hand and sighed softly in her heart. Hui and the others might not know. They thought that he had been searching for this self for only a short dozen of eras. In fact, they did not know if this had happened in the real history of the Dark Age. But for him, who had forgotten everything about the Dark Age, he had been searching for himself for dozens of eras. That's right, even if the real Dark Age had known about it, it did not matter. After all, he did not have any memory of the Dark Age, not even a fragment. If he already knew about it in this era and then forgot about it, he could only blame himself for being unlucky. After all, He had been searching for himself since the ancient age. It was not until the 139th era that he started to search for the Dark Age again. He was quite unlucky. If that's the case, it would explain why your presence is so similar to the gods. Brother Lei stroked his chin as he studied young Brother Feng from head to toe, and only spoke when he saw the latter's hairs standing on end. As you've said, you're an energy life form in disguise, and you've even altered your own body based on the god's power and rules. But young Brother Feng, that's actually impossible. Yin Nuoxing looked up and immediately felt that something was wrong. What do you mean? Could it be that you guys? We are all energy life forms. We were transformed from physical life forms into energy life forms under the guidance of the gods. The form of the laws that construct our roots are still human. This point has not been changed, and it is not the time to change. Only Big Brother AI and the other first-generation heirs could transform their form of laws into energy life forms, and they were transformed into energy life forms based on the guidance of the gods. Ordinary energy life forms use laws as their framework and then fill it with their own energy. That is why the level of energy is directly linked to the strength of the energy life form. But Brother Lei paused and folded his arms. Even energy life forms like Big Brother AI and the others have made adjustments to their own framework to become a higher level. In other words, they have changed the laws that serve as their framework. Perhaps they have used a higher level of power of laws, or perhaps they have mixed in some weak power of order. Either way, it is quite laborious. The exceedingly high level of energy life forms allowed them to maintain a relatively stable state. It was common knowledge that the more stable a state was, the more difficult it would be to change it. The levels of energy life forms would also shackle themselves due to the different levels of stability they achieved when they were formed, and it would not be so easy to break free of those shackles in the future. But you're changing day by day. Sui Feng continued Brother Lei's words and smiled bitterly at Brother Feng. Haven't you noticed that you are changing every day? Ever since you came into contact with the power of the gods, the more you come into contact with them, the more you change. You're changing more and more like the gods. You even use the laws of origin as your framework. This is impossible. The gods have denied it. They said that we would kill ourselves if we did it rashly. We should not do it rashly until we reach the peak of the primeval era and the conversion of origin energy to 100%. Even if we reach that level, we need the gods beside us to try it. Brother Lei covered his face with both hands. Although we have categorized all the abnormalities on you as you're a Brother Feng after all, so I don't feel strange when I think about it. We have actually discussed it many times in private, but we couldn't come to a conclusion. Yin Nuoxing, what kind of strange thing am I in your eyes? Just. Sui Feng and the others looked at each other and turned their heads away. Just ridiculous, hey. The way you turn your heads is exactly the same as them. Can you look them in the eye and say that? They really did not know much about the transformation of energy life forms. Looking at the front lines of the void, 90% of the energy life forms were warriors from the divine realm. The other energy life forms were, half-baked. This is our era, after all. Brother Lei spread his hands and shook his head, speaking rather helplessly. In the past, the battlefields between order and chaos had always been filled with energy life forms. Just like how the warriors at the front lines of the void are special models to the warriors of order, the energy life forms we have seen back then are not normal. It must be the same in the underworld, which is why I feel the need to say it. We're in a down-and-out era, right? We should be secretly happy that we have something to use. Upon hearing that, Hui scratched his face and smiled bitterly. How can we still care so much? That's true, but we're just talking about the situation. We're talking about the path of energy life forms in the future. We're talking about Brother Feng's abnormalities. Yin Nuoxing, to sum up what he had just said, rashly using the origin rules as the framework of an energy life form was the highest level of courting death, and he did it without knowing it at all, and nothing happened at all. So, little Brother Feng, you're inherently special. Now, we found an answer. Sui Feng smiled bitterly. And here I was wondering why you were already using the origin law to torture yourself when you were only at reciprocity. Even if you don't want to die, you shouldn't be so reckless. The problem is, you succeeded. Now we're not confident anymore. We're all taking turns to discuss whether we should play with our lives in advance or something. Oh my God, it's a good thing that the suggestion was shelved. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do anything other than hang in the origin shrine all year round. Brother Lay shuddered. Lingering fear appeared on his face. Yin Nuashing was covered in cold sweat when he heard that. He hurriedly waved his hand. No, no, no. I'm just something that's neither human nor ghost. Please don't target me. Something big will happen. Furthermore, the conversion back then wasn't that simple. It took me several life-and-death struggles to get it right. In the 100 billion years that I was dead, I had to go through a lot of trouble before I finally figured out the standard to convert a normal law into a law of origin. After that, it took me 2 to 3 eras to build it up step by step and fumble about. It was only after 5 eras that I officially declared it complete. Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. And it was very difficult. Yes, I made the decision in a daze while I was dying. Although I was a little dazed, I could feel that it was very difficult. But was it really that dangerous? An energy life form, changing the framework of its own laws. It's like picking out every tendon, blood vessel, and bone in one's body, and then upgrading and reassembling them at the same time as it is now. Just listening to it makes me feel like I'm going to faint. Brother Lay's forehead began to sweat as he spoke. Everyone was also sweating as they listened. Even though energy life forms couldn't even feel pain at their limits, just listening to it made them feel irritated. Sui Feng smiled bitterly and wiped the sweat off his forehead. Now that I think about it, it actually has something to do with your own essence, Brother Feng. It's your essence that allows you to disguise yourself as an energy life form and move forward according to the limits of an energy life form. Although the road ahead is full of thorns and obstacles, and the road is also full of potholes, it's still a road. Even if it's not the right time, you can still force your way through, but you have to pay a great price. And now, there's a God standing in the middle of the road, waiting for us. So you're saying that we have to be prepared to be taught a lesson by the origin God if we want to go over? We asked. Huey's smile became even more bitter when he saw them nodding. That was the most difficult condition in the void of order. We suddenly looked at Feng, who was in a daze, and patted him. Feng, I told you not to play with your life so often. Look at you now. What do you want to say? Sigh. I don't know if you're lucky or not. You cut off your own path and struggled to reach this point with your own essence. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. Stop, I crawled over here. I crawled over here on all fours. As for the luck you mentioned, look back at the course of my life. Based on your conscience, can you pick out a few things that can be considered as luck? Come on, tell me. If you pick one, I'll play with my life again. Hui was silent for a while. Looking back at the past, he found that it was actually a path woven with blood. Every step he took left a bloody footprint. The difference was that other people's bloody path was made by other people's shoes. The bloody footprints were made by the blood of the enemy. But Feng, damn it, he was bleeding all the way forward. The bloody footprints he left behind were his own blood. That was really scary. But if we had to pick out a few things that were considered lucky, he had something to say. He put his hands on his hips and said righteously, "Look at your big family. Which one of them is not lucky enough to be picked up?" In the end, he threw a provocative look at Feng. Come on, deny it for me. Yin Nuashing was speechless. He was being shameless. Look at the way the little angel was staring at her. How could she deny it? She couldn't deny it. But then again, well, it seemed that the only thing that could be considered lucky in life was to meet a big group of people. Yes, it seemed that there was no such thing. Well, meeting the right person was indeed the most important thing in life. He had encountered enough problems, but meeting the right person, indeed, this was the greatest fortune in his life. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes and waved her hand. She replied domineeringly, "Isn't it just playing with your life? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times? Come on, I'll play with you in minutes. Hui was shocked. Don't. Even if you want to deny it, Don't really play with your life, you big idiot. Chapter 1914. Life was born to experience the hardships of irregular travel. Every stage of life would have its corresponding hardships, and the hardships of different races and life forms would be different. Some are busy growing their bodies from the age of 3 to 20. Some were especially unlucky, roaming the world in a daze since the age of 7 or 8, rolling and beating all over the world in a daze for the rest of their lives. Even more unlucky, they had already started fighting with the void from the moment they were blinded. The last one was the origin life form. That thing was as unlucky as he was. After saying so much, he just wanted to say that there was no need to think that any stage or form of life would be better than others. It did not exist. As one grew up, the level of troublesome matters would also increase bit by bit. Sometimes one might even jump a level in an instant. If one could not keep up, they would only fall. Life traveling in the world was suffering. It was just that some people might not suffer as much, but their endings were actually more or less the same. And once one shifted their gaze from the real world to the void, they would know that everyone was more or less the same. None of them had a peaceful life. There were many types of troublesome things, too many to count. But after categorizing everything, there was only one designated troublesome thing left: living. Yes, living was the biggest troublesome thing. Everything done, whether it was preparing in advance, paving the way in advance, or something else, was just for this one troublesome thing. Therefore, life was born to live, and living was troublesome. It was almost the same as being born to be troublesome. Well, it was almost the same as being born to be troublesome. All right, I've diverted the topic from the beginning. Many of the things I've said above were actually meant for other living beings. As for him, he had a hurried expression, and no one liked him the moment his ears were covered. Plus, he was an undying, so of all the troublesome things to live, the only troublesome thing left was resistance. You see, even undying had headaches about the void. Everyone was the same. On the basis of the void, both mortals and gods had their own troubles, and the troubles were all corresponding to their own level. There was no difference. Oh, he had gone off topic again. What he wanted to say was that when he was dealing with the biggest mess in the void, if he really could not handle everything alone and had to come into contact with some people, he hoped that the people he met were not idiots. Just look at the first generation of the void frontline. It was not pure, and its core purpose was clear, but it was covered with a layer of dust that clearly had other purposes. He did not want to come into contact with that thing, even if it collapsed. That was why he really left after that. He did not return until the first generation of the void frontline collapsed. At that time, he was also involved in the war between order and chaos, but he used the excuse that he had to guard the divine realm to force himself not to come into contact with those things. Yes, troublesome, too troublesome. Living was troublesome enough, and he did not want to come into contact with things that were even more troublesome. Although he liked to use his brain, it did not mean that he liked to soak his brain in a puddle of sewage. Therefore, when Hui took the lead to reorganize the second generation of the Void Frontline, which was the current Void Frontline, he came because there were not many idiots left. At least, there were no idiots among the decision-makers. With that reorganization as the beginning, he could be like he was now. He did not have to care about the big picture, and he was only responsible for maximizing combat power and risking his life, because he basically did not have to worry about the things below. On the other hand, when he thought about the first generation of the Void Frontline, he felt that he might collapse before he went to war. Or whether he could survive to that extent was a problem. Forget it. There was no point in talking about it. To put it bluntly, every encounter in life was a different level of trouble. Some troubles were really troublesome, causing people to have a headache and high blood pressure. Some troubles might be distressing, but they were not annoying. He did not know many people in his life. There were those who liked to interrupt, those who were noisy, those who hurt friends, and those who were unreliable. But in summary, compared to meeting some idiots who had no idea what was going on in their heads. Actually, what he wanted to say was that the current situation was actually quite good. Having these people around him was actually that's what he meant. Oh, why are you being so arrogant? Hui grinned cheekily as he nudged Maple, who was facing the core of the pillar of creation with a serious look. His mouth was so wide that it reached his ears. Be honest and say that last sentence. Say it, say it. I won't say it. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. With so many people staring at him, Hui Ming knew that he couldn't say it out loud. He couldn't say it out loud, but he still had to say it out loud in front of so many people. He might as well just grab the Staff of Origin and charge at the primal chaos concept body. Hey, we are all on the same side. What are you afraid of? Hui shook his head and sighed. What did he mean? What did he mean? What did he mean? In fact, he had already expressed his stance to this extent. Even if he didn't say the following sentence, everyone would know what he meant. But sometimes, even if they knew it well, they still wanted to hear it with their own ears. Knowing and saying it were two different things. They were not the same. Yin Nuoxing showed a fierce look at Hui Ming, as if she could not wait to pounce on him and bite him to death. However, Hui Ming was not afraid in the face of such a fierce expression. He stretched his arm to the side and pushed the little angel in front of him. The effect was immediate. Feng's fierce look withered in an instant. Hee, this is interesting. Although it is not possible to find Maple's weakness, it should be a very interesting point. Pinching the cheeks of the little angel, who was grinning, Yin Nuoxing turned to stare at the core of the Staff of Creation and said to Hui and the others, All right, you guys have gotten the first-hand information and see me make a fool of myself. You guys can go do whatever you need to do. I'm going to start playing with my life. Hui Ming was shocked when the topic suddenly changed to a serious state. He quickly went up and said, No, I was just joking. You didn't take it seriously, did you? What? It has nothing to do with that. Yin Nuoxing heaved a sigh of relief and raised her finger to point at the core of the Staff of Creation. You also need to play with your life to deal with them. Don't tell me you have forgotten that this is their thing. Even if there's a strange thing in my heart now, it is said that it will be more air. I don't know how to deal with it. Maybe it will be more convenient, but it will also cost the soul of the Yuanshi realm to deal with it. This. Hui Ming's face wrinkled with pain. He had actually forgotten about the Staff of Creation and the Staff of Origin in the past 2 or 3 days when Maple was asleep. Now that he had brought the topic back to this direction, he suddenly felt a little bit of a headache. He turned to look at Sui Feng and the others, and, as expected, they were also frowning. To be honest, there was not much use for them to stay here. But as they thought at first, they actually had to stay here to deal with 2 kinds of trouble. One, they were afraid that the relics of origin would go out of control. Now, that there were second-generation inheritors who had come into contact with the relics of origin. Although they said that they were unreliable, they could still provide some useful help at a critical moment. If something went wrong with the relics of origin, Sui Feng and the others could help from the side. Secondly, they had to keep an eye on Maple. Ming would not be able to keep an eye on this guy, and Maple was also a stubborn guy when faced with such a situation. If they wanted to pull Maple out of his stubbornness, they would have to use strength no less than fighting with the chaos concept body. He could not do it alone, and needed a group of people to push Maple to the ground. In short, they stayed here to prevent the relics of origin from going out of control, and to prevent the observer from going out of control. Well, those were the 2 very important points. Other than that, they did not have any other purpose. They stayed here to do something that did not require their full attention, such as looking up at Maple for a while, observing the progress of things, and occasionally interrupting to show their ignorance. Well, that was it. They were a group of emergency response mechanisms that would not be used if nothing happened, but they were afraid that something would suddenly go wrong and they would not be able to control in time. Sitting here was good enough. It was convenient for them to rescue Maple when they were close at hand. Yin Nuoxing knew why they stayed, so he didn't bother about them. He knew his own stubbornness. If he really encountered some uncontrollable situation and was still hesitating, someone would come and pull him, or pull him twice, or maybe back and forth 3 times. He would give up, but he wouldn't give up completely. He did not have any good ideas at the moment. He did not know how to deal with the core of the Staff of Creation and the core of the Staff of Origin. The best he could think of was to solve the problem of charging them. Although there were people who carried a small staff of creation as a single weapon, but after thinking about the difficulty, this idea was more or less set aside. On one hand, the difficulty was in his aspect. The idea of a small staff of creation was very good, but it was difficult to realize. The miniaturization of weapons was a big problem in itself, and to ensure that its power did not drop too much during the miniaturization. This was a relic of origin. On the other hand, the trouble was not his problem, but everyone else's. He thought about the small staff of creation and felt that there might not be many people who could use it in the Void frontline. Again, this was a relic of origin. Even if it was deliberately weakened in all aspects to cooperate with everyone, it did not mean that everyone could use this thing. With these two problems, he played around with it for a while and felt that it was not worth it. "Are you in trouble?" The soft voice of the little angel rang in his ear, startling Yin Nuashing, who was deep in thought. He turned his head and saw the little angel looking at him curiously. He could not help but be startled. "Oh, aren't you going back to rest?" "Well, I came out to keep you company." The little angel nodded gently. "It's nice to be cooped up at home," but she sneaked a glance at Hui and the others who were busy with other things, and then turned back to look at him. "I just suddenly wanted to come out and see you." "Oh." Yin Nuashing scratched his head and sighed as he looked at the light orb that was thousands of feet in size that was entangled by countless chains of order and rules. Then he continued the topic from before. "I don't know where to start. Even if I've been inside and heard some things, it's not much help for what I need to do now." Looking at his troubled look, the little angel reminded him softly. "Didn't you say that after the core of order and the heart of the world fused, it might have some effect when you come into contact with the relic of origin? Anyway, how about you touch it first? You're not the kind of person who can come up with ideas just by thinking." Yin Nuashing thought for a moment and nodded. "That's true. Anyway, let's just touch it first. Let's not talk about the staff of creation for now. Let's take a look at the staff of origin first." His initial idea about the energy tower, which was still unconfirmed and currently vacant, was to use the staff of origin as a reference to see if he could get some good ideas from this creation to allow the new energy tower to unleash its maximum power. It was an idea that was put forward when the energy source was just about to be mass-produced. Now that he had dug out the core of the staff of origin, he found an even bigger problem. The first generation and the second generation of the core of creation. In terms of specialization, the second generation of the core of creation was more suitable for building the energy tower. However, the staff of creation was obviously more than one level higher than the staff of origin. If he wanted to use the second generation of the core of creation directly, this seemed to be a little difficult. Although he said that he should just take a look at the situation, he did not know how to do it. He took the 3 balls in front of him and did not know how to do it. He poked them with his hand. A surge of origin energy and origin law surged. It was quite active. He could feel that there was a huge amount of energy in it. Even when he used the core of order and the heart of the world, there was no reaction. Still, there was no special reaction. Speaking of which, he did not take a closer look at the two things after they fused. He only saw the changes in their appearance, but that was when they were inside. Now that they had come out, he looked at them again. This should be a pale, golden, transparent ball of light. Inside the ball of light, there was a particularly thorny crystal. The crystal inside the ball of light was spinning up, down, left, and right without any pattern. Except that the crystal inside started spinning on its own after it came out. There was no change at all. Could it be that there was something wrong with the usage? It was common knowledge that the god of origin did not even bring a manual with her when she left things behind. Who knew if this thing used to open someone's mind would be a fishing rod or a chopper back in the day, or even something to stuff in the toilet? That's what it meant. When I left, I really should have asked her to explain how to use this thing. Could it be that research on your own actually included research on your own usage? Well, don't. The consequence of messing around with the relic of origin was that you would be sent to the spiritual temple to be hung. There were a lot of scary ideas in his mind. Although it was a little scary, he still tried to figure out how to use this thing. However, what made him a little surprised was that this time, he couldn't even do anything to it using the method he had used before. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a few minutes. He took it out of his heart and placed it on his hand. Faint golden light scattered in the surrounding space, making the light in the observer's space seem to dim a little. This sky with the scene of eternal night was obviously filled with light during the day. At this moment, it was actually dark. The faint golden light, ball the size of a head in his hand, became a rather conspicuous light source here. In the light that was constantly released, there were some golden energy particles flying up and down, flying in all directions. After they crossed a certain distance, they would disappear. It was a little like the golden ember-like energy particles circling around the little angel and Ming Ming. He stared at it for a while, but he had no idea what it was. He waved the thing in his hand at the little angel and showed it to her for a while. Then he raised his hand and tapped on the surface of the thing while saying, "Here, this is the fusion of the two things. I still don't know what it is used for." His finger tapped lightly on the surface of the light ball, producing a crisp sound of tapping on the energy crystal, and the golden energy particles that it emitted would also show a slight fluctuation. Yin Nuoxing keenly captured this weak fluctuation, and after thinking for a while, he tapped on the surface of the light ball a few more times. Accompanied by the crisp sound, the golden energy particles around it trembled again, which made him a little concerned, and he could not help but mutter to himself, "No matter how I do it in my body, there is no reaction at all. Could it be that there will only be some other movement if I touch it out?" The little angel whispered in her ear, "Try touching it with origin energy or origin law. I feel that it looks like it's full. It will shake with a touch." Yin Nuoxing was speechless. "Are you saying that the golden light it emits is because it has nothing better to do?" Anyway, he gave a try. He gathered the origin energy and origin law in his palm and began to infuse it bit by bit. Hum! A violent energy scream suddenly erupted from the ball in his hand. The shrill sound spread throughout the observer space. It even penetrated the observer space and spread to the entire node 0. At the same time, golden rings of light of different sizes suddenly exploded from the golden ball. The mighty origin energy fluctuation filled the observer space and node 0 in an instant. Countless people were shocked. Yin Nuoxing's shocked face was swallowed by the golden light. She seemed to hear a lot of screams echoing in her ears. There were probably more people who were caught in the crossfire. As soon as the golden halo reached its limit, it exploded with a loud bang, releasing a supreme and pure power of order. It poured into the void and turned into a mighty impact of order. In just an instant, everyone in Node 0's domain of order suddenly realized that all the abyssal death mist spawns in front of them had exploded into a cloud of abyssal death mist and disintegrated. Even the large rift in the abyssal death mist in the distance had been completely closed in one go. The people guarding the domain of order were stunned by this sudden scene. In addition to the unique impact of order, just now, they all tacitly turned around to look at Node 0 behind them. At this moment, Node 0 was enveloped by a faint golden spherical barrier. Countless golden lightning bolts and what looked like stars danced on the surface of the barrier. It seemed to reflect the billions of stars in the world. It was incomparably gorgeous. At the same time, they could feel an unparalleled power of order from this gorgeous barrier. This is Lord Feng exploding again. Shoo, watch what you say. Although this may be the truth, don't speak blindly. Ahem. What I mean is Lord Feng messing around with something and causing it to explode? The person who spoke just now smiled bitterly and hurriedly turned to Jing Yuanji, who was commanding the node. "Jing, Your Eminence, why don't you go and confirm it?" In fact, when the abnormality occurred, Jing Yuanji had already confirmed the situation inside the observer space. However, it seemed to be shrouded by the origin energy. The overly chaotic energy blocked out all energy auras, so she could not confirm Lord Feng's situation. Just as she was about to rush over to check it out, the soul seed in her mind suddenly responded. Yuanji, there's nothing here. Did the commotion just now reach the domain of order? Jing Yuanji smiled bitterly and turned to look at the situation outside the domain of order. Lord Feng, the energy explosion just now destroyed all the abyssal death fog spawns. The large crack in the abyssal death fog spawns was also wiped clean. You accidentally gave the origin heavenly god's relic. No, you can say that. Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. Anyway, it's nothing. You all just continue to be vigilant. There was a small accident here. If anything happens at the front line, let us know. All right, Lord Foam, be careful. Don't be too hasty. Jing Yuanji was a little worried and could not help but remind him. It really didn't explode. He just accidentally threw out the energy that he had been accumulating for a long time and caused an energy explosion. Yin Nuashing explained anxiously. Anyway, you must be careful. Jing Yuanji shrunk her neck and quickly replied before turning off the soul transmission. When she saw that everyone was looking at her in confusion, she waved her hand. It's nothing. Lord Feng just blew up some things. It's not a big deal. The energy phenomenon will disappear soon. We just have to be vigilant. Everyone instantly responded with an "oh" to show that they were used to it. They glanced at the golden barrier covering Node 0 and no longer paid attention to it. They set up the energy towers, accumulated energy, and aimed it at the void. The large crack in the abyssal death fog spawn was slowly opening again. That girl hung up on my soul transmission. In the observer space, Yin Nuashing's eyes widened. He rubbed his head and smiled bitterly. He did not expect such a big reaction. The little angel raised her hand dizzily to find his position. She pulled herself hard and hung herself on him. She wrapped her white wings around him to prevent herself from swaying in the wrong place. She said dizzily, "Look, I just said that it seemed to be full. You suddenly stuffed in a large amount of, energy, so dizzy." Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. I didn't expect it to be so full that it was about to vomit, and I was just testing it. Really, Hui and the others, who had been hit by a strong order impact without warning, were hurriedly opening a crack in the void to get out. Their faces were full of black lines. These people were also caught in the crossfire. They were sitting there and doing their own things, but in less than 10 minutes, they were pressed into the void with a loud bang. Hui was speechless. "Feng, what did you blow up this time?" "This golden light." Sui Feng held his dizzy head and shook his head quickly. He looked at the enormous golden energy screen in the sky and the lightning bolts and starlight dancing on the screen. He couldn't help but widely open his eyes as he said, "This is... that's it. Yin Nuashing, I'll beat you up if you play riddles again." No. That's it. I can't remember what that is, but it's that." Sui Feng jumped on the spot anxiously. When he saw his sister crawling out of the void, he quickly pulled her and pointed to the sky. Sister, look at this. This is that. Sui Feng, who was still dizzy, became even more dizzy when he pulled her. She wanted to teach her brother a lesson, but when she opened her eyes and saw the thing in front of her, she could not help but be shocked. This is the concept barrier of the land of origin, but the aura is not as strong as before. What is your appearance?" Sui Feng looked at Yin Nuashing. She was startled when she saw him wrapped in a pair of wings, and then saw the pale golden ball of light in his hand. "Did you open this barrier?" "Maybe." Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly and quickly composed himself. "You're saying that this is the concept barrier of the land of origin? Is it the original layer?" "No, the aura is not the same. There's a big difference in levels. But it is indeed the concept barrier of the land of origin. It is a defensive barrier set up by the gods." Sui Feng nodded slightly and then frowned. "But it doesn't seem to be just that. I can't recognize it." Sui Feng quickly pulled the white-clothed girl who was still trying to calm herself down. "Little Xiao, do you remember what the gods said when they opened the barrier?" The white-clothed girl closed her eyes and gestured with her hand. "Don't shake, I'm dizzy." Yin Nuashing looked at them speechlessly. The way the siblings pulled people was the same. Even if they were not knocked out by the impact of the order, they would be knocked out. Although there might be a slight difference, but it was basically confirmed that it was the concept barrier of the land of origin. Yin Nuashing suddenly had a lot of ideas and was already dividing them downwards. "That's not right. Am I not messing with the staff of creation?" Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment, and then waved his hand. Forget it. They were all troublesome things. There was no need to queue up and deal with the one that blew up first. Chapter 19:15. He still could not describe the level of concept-level power. According to the classification he knew, it should be at the top of the many levels. Of course, it could also be pushed down by the existence of the heavenly god of origin and the concept body of chaos. Regardless, concept-level power was the highest level of power he knew, but how to describe this power and how to describe it? He was not too sure. He could only give a rough example. It was probably like a beginner god looking at the power of rules, and a post-god god looking at the power of order in the first 4 levels. These 3 situations were about the same level, but the concept-level power could not be touched, and the primeval realm could only be touched at the pinnacle of the realm. To put it bluntly, such power would only be unleashed when the heavenly god of origin and the chaos concept body fought each other. It was almost at that level, and it would not be reduced by much even if it was slightly reduced since it had to be primeval pinnacle anyway. That was where the problem came. When they knew that a chaos concept body was about to attack them, they did not have the heavenly god of origin to help them. They only had a large pile of relics that they had left behind, and they were not particularly reliable either. It was obvious from how they were scattered all over the ground. Even so, when faced with a chaos concept body, they would need concept class power to face it head-on, to barely hold on and not be killed in a single wave. Previously, they didn't have this kind of power, nor did they find this kind of power when they searched through the pile of relics. They thought that after putting the Fortress of Origin back together, this kind of gap could be filled, but who knew if it could be filled or not? Then, this barrier suddenly appeared. The concept barrier of the continent of origin. Just from the name alone, there was no need for further explanation. However, just like how it didn't need any explanation, there was no doubt that it had changed a little. After all, the one who activated this barrier seemed to be him. There was no mistaking it. The pale golden barrier that emanated golden starlight and golden lightning had emerged from the pale golden luminous orb he held in his hand. He could feel the energy emanating from maintaining the barrier, and he felt that it would be drained dry if he did not call for backup in 3 to 5 minutes. What a joke! He had plenty of backup energy, but his own energy capacity alone could only last 3 to 5 minutes. As expected of a concept class barrier, it was a bottomless pit even if it was unleashed by him, and he would have to prepare at least 6 or 7 world luminous orbs to power it in actual combat, so that the barrier would not suddenly break when they hit it, and they would be finished when the chaos concept body came right at them. But he was more curious about what Sui Qing and the others meant. Did they mean that this barrier had other uses? Or did they think that this barrier had other uses? Or perhaps this new barrier was slightly different from what they thought it was? Maybe there was something more or something less. So, have you come back to your senses? Sui Qing and the others asked. Faint. It's okay. I'll take a look first. The girl in white held her forehead with her hand and looked at the gorgeous golden barrier above her head in a daze. Then, she closed her eyes again. Yin Nuoxing felt that she was going to look at her memories. While he waited, Yin Nuoxing took out a world luminous orb from his dimensional pocket, adjusted it for a moment, and pressed it into his world heart so that it could continue to power the pale golden luminous orb. The ebbing tide over his body abruptly eased considerably, and he breathed a sigh of relief. The energy consumption of this thing was ridiculous, and he had a feeling that if he let it continue to absorb energy, it would drag him and his rules over after it was drained. Conceptual space, if I'm not mistaken, that's what the gods had mentioned before. The girl in white said faintly. Perhaps they were referring to the space here, the space covered by the barrier, and not just a simple barrier. Conceptual space, the space of concept-level power? What does that mean? No, what's the use of it? Have you heard of it before? At the mention of this, Yin Nuoxing had a headache. He did not really understand what concept-level power was, and no one present could give him a pointer or two. Now that there were 2 things related to concept-level power, could it be that he was going to stumble blindly all the way? Both Sui Qing and the girl in white shook their heads at the same time. Sui Qing said, "Before we were sealed in the soul's suppressing ring, The barrier only appeared a few times. Even if it did appear, it wasn't really a big deal. The venerated gods also didn't mention more about this barrier. All we know is the existence of the barrier itself. As for what it does, we don't know. Yin Nuoxing's face was full of distress. Just as he was about to ask a few more questions, he suddenly recalled what Sui Qing had said. He was stunned for a moment, looked up at the barrier in the sky, and thought for a moment. Then, he turned back and poked the core of the staff of creation with his finger. A moment later, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he turned to the others and said, "Oh, I think I know what it's used for." Hui was very excited and rushed forward to answer. "More explosives." Yin Nuoxing was speechless. "Wait, why is this answer? In terms of the results of things, although that is indeed the case, but can't you be more specific? You have already reached the end of the line." Yin Nuoxing scratched his head and looked at Hui with a little disdain. He reached out and patted the core of the staff of creation and explained the conceptual barrier opened by the heart of the world. The space it covers is endowed with some kind of concept related to origin. In the simplest terms, certain things that we could not touch in the past can be touched in this space at this moment. Conceptualization has something to do with the power of the gods. Brother Lei crossed his arms and frowned as he pondered for a moment. Suddenly, he seemed to have understood. Is it because the gods have given some kind of authority? Well, that's the general idea. Yin Nuoxing nodded slightly. Just like my observer dimension, the sanctum of creation, and the space between creations. These places have a very strong analytical ability and can easily disassemble them into parts and individuals for analysis. But they can't do anything to the staff of creation and the staff of origin. After all, both of them are related to the power of concepts. Based on what we can touch now, none of them have the power of concepts. That is to say, we can't do anything to the creations that have the power of concepts. Even if we forcibly pick up bits and pieces from the core of the staff of creation as results, it has nothing to do with the power of concepts. In other words, in the conceptual space built by the world core of the continent of origins, Sui Feng finally understood, and his expression became similar to Huey's excited look. We can create concept-class creations of order. Hui also understood the change from the result to the essence. He crossed his arms and kept nodding. That means you can disassemble more things, Foam. The second-generation heirs were speechless. They were too excited to think about this. If they could fully grasp this conceptual dimension, wouldn't it mean that all the things left behind by Her Eminence could be used? They whipped their heads around to look at Maple, and when they saw him raise his eyebrows and reveal a very thoughtful expression, they felt a chill run down their spines. They could not help but facepalm. This meant that Maple was going to dismantle the origin creation, opening up his authority and whatnot. That was tantamount to opening up the entire path for Maple. In that case, he would have no scruples at all. No, they couldn't see such a scene. They had to quickly prepare eye masks. If possible, they had to prepare earplugs as well. This thing has even penetrated my observer dimension, as expected of the power of concepts. Yin Nuoxing held the heart of the world in her hand and lightly flicked her finger over its surface. What should be an infinite space is nothing but an ordinary little space in front of the power of concepts. It pierced through without much effort. What's the result of a clash between the power of laws and concepts? We asked. As you can see, and as I've said, Yin Nuoxing tossed the heart of the world into the air twice. Completely defenseless. I had expected that since I've fought the chaos concept body twice, or thrashed by its pure suppressive power in the void and nothingness, it had not even fully unleashed its power of concepts, and after a long period of disintegration, it should have been damaged and would take some time to recover. But even at that level, yes, against that level of chaos concept body, even with the power of 147 origin energies, I would only be thrashed in the void. So, do you know why I had that half-dead expression when I heard that there might be a chaos concept body in the underworld? Everyone smiled bitterly. They clearly understood that going up against any chaos concept body without concept power would be a devastating blow to order. It was no wonder that the heavenly gods of origin said that if any chaos concept body were moved freely in the void without any restraints, the world of order would be done for. It would be King done for. It could be seen from that aspect that the chaos concept body could destroy the defenseless void of order without much effort. It would only take a few minutes to unleash its chaos domain, and the void of order would crumble. Compared to void turbulence, there was basically no difference apart from the creations left by various life forms in the void. All life was dead. Yin Nuoxing glanced at the others who were just as busy sighing with emotion as he was back then. He adjusted the energy output of the heart of the world and retracted the barrier outside the observer space. Although he didn't know what the concept level power was, since the heart of the world had already merged with his soul, he could just treat it as a passive ability that could be controlled. He tried to guide its energy and let it be released at the location he wanted it to be released. After trying for a few minutes, Yin Nuoxing barely learned how to guide the world core's energy to spread and cover the entire observer space. He then breathed a sigh of relief. It's a rare opportunity. Let's not delay. While everyone was still indulging in their own thoughts, their attention was pulled back by this sentence. As soon as they looked up, they saw a certain observer pressing his hand on the core of the staff of creation in front of him, holding his breath calmly. They collectively cried out in their hearts and hurriedly raised their hands to cover their faces. Boom! It exploded. They did not even have time to cover their eyes. Their hearts were broken into 2 pieces. Forget it. They were almost used to it, either actively or passively watching the relic of origin being blown up back and forth. It was almost numb. They were numb to it. There was nothing to be afraid of. The energy explosion came from the chains of order and law at the core of the staff of creation. Time and time again, the energy explosion broke the rings of the chains clean. The broken chains stopped rotating and slowly opened facing them. They seemed to be watching a clenched hand slowly unclenching its taut fingers. When the chains had all surrounded the core of the staff of creation, they stopped moving and stood still in place. Wait a minute, Maple. Hui suddenly remembered a very important question when he saw the changes. He pointed at the core in front of him. Did you forget that this thing was specially made by the god of origin? It was made layer by layer like a matryoshka doll. Could it be that you have figured out, so you blew it up so easily? Yin Nuoxing put her hands on her hips. Not at all. Everyone was speechless. But I don't have to remember it. It's such a complicated and troublesome thing, right? Even if I was temporarily given some kind of power to dismantle and repair it, it doesn't mean that I can make it out with my bare hands. If I'm not technically qualified, it's still a big problem. I can't fix it now. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. Everyone's faces turned pale. Sui Feng's breathing stopped. Just when he was about to faint, Yin Nuoxing waved her hand and pointed at the world core. But it's enough that it remembers it. I don't have to remember it, right? I'll remember it. Huey's eyes glowed red. His mind was filled with the great dream of having a staff of creation. Could it be that it can finally become a personal weapon? That's not possible. It's impossible. Even if everyone has a staff of creation, you won't be able to find someone who can use it. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes at him. This is just a world core. It's not a space of creation or any other similar space. There's no way to create such a thing. Instead, its function is repair. Yes, you heard it right. It's repair. Hurry up and get that pile of junk in the Fortress of Origin. Asterisk bang. Asterisk. Yin Nuoxing was stunned for a moment. Before she could finish, she heard a series of clanging sounds. She turned around and saw Hui, Sui Qing, and the girl in white standing there in a daze. They turned to look at the empty space beside them. If she was not mistaken, the violent noise just now should have been caused by Sui Feng and Brother Lei suddenly rushing out. Yin Nuoxing coughed dryly, ignoring the 2 guys who were intermittently spasming. What were we talking about? Oh, repair. Yes, repair. That's why I was relieved to break the core of the staff of creation. After all, it can be repaired. But actually, what I said just now was not quite right. If you want to say remember, to be more precise, their existence is recorded in the world core. We heard that and let out a sharp, enlightened voice. The world core of the continent of origin, those things are recorded in it. The heart of the world itself is a huge storage. Sui Qing's blue starry eyes lit up. Hurry up and see if there are those creations of order that we used back then. About that, although we can find them. Yin Nuoxing scratched her head and looked at Sui Qing. You forgot that this thing can be seen, but not created. Sui Qing was stunned for a moment. Her pretty face trembled a few times before she could not help but let out a faint, bitter laugh. Yes, that's it. I was a little excited and forgot. Yin Nuoxing shrugged and threw out a pancake formation to try to analyze the core structure in front of him that had been broken into a dozen pieces. He held the heart of the world that was hanging on the side in his hand and stretched out his hand from the pile of feathers with difficulty to show Hui and the others. Then he fiddled with it from left to right. His eyes stared at the inside of the pale, golden sphere, as if he could see something. There's indeed something there. There seems to be a lot of things stored inside, but as I said just now, these things are all things with concept-level power, and we can't make them. The things that the origin heavenly god uses to set up defenses all have concept-level power, but in large quantities. But as long as there's even a tiny bit of it, we definitely can't make them. Even if we forcibly make them, we can at most make an inferior textile that lacks a soul and foundation. And the effect may be the kind of inferior product that hurts the enemy 1,000 times and the user 10 million times. Hui and the others were speechless. Yin Nuoxing sighed. He had thought of pouring out all the things inside. He did see a lot of things in the information stored in the world core. There were familiar things like the Temple of Origin, the Staff of Origin, the Staff of Creation. That's it. He was familiar with these things and could not recognize the other things. Even the green stick was not hanging inside. Otherwise, he might have some unrealistic ideas. For example, he could make them in batches and let it repair them. Ha ha ha. Whimsical daydreaming. Hui coughed dryly and wanted to pull foam away. But when he saw that foam was wrapped in a pair of wings like a cocoon, forget it. He did not want to pull him away. He lowered his voice and whispered mysteriously, Foam, don't you have that? Like more whimsical ideas or something? What kind of work can you do with that crazy brain of yours? Crazy brain. Yin Nuoxing's face twitched and rolled his eyes. Actually, I have some ideas, but it's not easy to do. The most fundamental problem is that we can't use the power of conceptualization. No, it's not that we can't use it. It's that we can't even use it. Previously, I used the origin energy and origin law of the origin relic to mess around. The difference was only in level, but I have those two things, so I can use them by paying another price. Although the price is the sea of energy that I have accumulated for 5 eras. This time, we are up against conceptualization power. We don't have anyone who understands it. How do you expect me to deal with something that is in the blind spot of everyone's knowledge? Hui grimaced and refused to give up. You have to find a way to make it. It's just sitting there holding so many things. It's so frustrating to just look at it, but not use it. This thing doesn't have the ability to make things. You have to think of something. You're making things difficult for me. Do you think I'm the god of origin? Executor. Something like that. We suddenly had an idea while he was talking. The current situation is that it's holding a lot of things inside and can't take them out, right? Yin Nuoxing. Damn it. Why does this guy always like to talk about this? Does he think I'm constipated? Hui was stared at by foam for a while. He trembled and quickly became serious. What I mean is that this thing can only be seen but not used. But we have to find a way to guide it. For example, put it in the creation space or something. It doesn't have the ability to make things, but the creation space does. Can't we just find something to connect it to? We can't use the power of conceptualization, but doesn't it have a part of the power of conceptualization? Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes and replied, I've thought about it, but these two things are not of the same model. Based on the current situation, we probably can't find a corresponding creation. Tisk, it's just a world core in the first place. There's nothing special about it. The repair function is the world core's own, but it's a little too broad. If you insist on taking out the things inside, there's nothing I can do. This was not much different from forcing the chaos concept body to use the power of order. It was something that could not be done at all. It was not like they could see that both planets were shrouded in rings and switch their rings on a whim. They would be lucky if they did not get smashed to death by a meteor shower. Seeing that Hui was about to say something, Yin Nuoxing directly threw a sentence in his face. To put it simply, you'll know when you look at the base of the staff of creation. These two things are a set. They are creations of the same level, so there's nothing wrong with putting them together. But now, if I remove the restriction on the Netherworld Ruin Sword and give it to a monkey, what do you think? This thing is just a storehouse. What unrealistic thoughts are you harboring? Okay, I actually know what you mean. Hui grinned bitterly. I just don't want to give up. It's not easy to find a set of things left behind by the heavenly god of origins, but it's placed right in front of me, and I can't use it. Shoo, just pretend you didn't see it. Then you won't feel bad. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes until they hurt a little. She reached out and rubbed her eyes. Anyway, these things are in here. They can't run away, but they can't be used. I'll take them and see what they're used for. Although I can't use them, I should know what they're used for. Well, just like you guys said, I'll try to make a creation of order with the same effect. I'll try to make it as far away from the oddballs as possible, but don't think about the power of conceptualization. It's impossible. Didn't you say that it's lacking a soul or something? Hui scratched his head. You're still insisting on this? TSK, I'm just in a hurry to improve the combat power of our people. Yin Nuoxing pursed her lips and turned her head with a helpless look. There are many kinds of order creations. At the moment, the more the better. Looking at the front line of the void, there are only two kinds of order creations. One is a domain-type temple of origins used for defense, and the other is an energy tower used for attack. That's it. These are the two kinds of creations. Although there are basically only these two kinds, the defensive type and the offensive type. No. There are definitely only these two kinds of creations. But there aren't many kinds, and we can't make too many tricks. If it's too monotonous, there won't be any surprises. If we're charging into the underworld and our attack method is figured out in a few hits, then we'll be in a stalemate. Hui heard that and pinched his chin. I think our attack method has been figured out. Yin Nuoxing was bewildered, beaming a forced smile. Yeah, they've been fighting in the void for 5 eras. Moreover, they had fought against a high-level, original, incipient Grey Commander for several eras. They must have understood the situation. If they rushed over like that, it was just a head-on collision in terms of power. Regretfully, in a head-on battle, in terms of power, they were at a disadvantage. It was like an egg hitting a rock. Then, they had to think of a solution. For example, they could turn the egg into a crystal. That way, they wouldn't need to worry about not being able to break the rock. Right? That's why we need to come up with something new, whether it's in terms of defense or offense. Yin Nuoxing nodded and looked at the world core with narrowed eyes. We're busy creating trump cards, not only to increase our strength, but also to give the enemy an unexpected surprise when we use it. This surprise is very important, and it's good to fake as many deaths as possible. I think my attack method also needs to be modified, such as the 3 moves to clear the field. Hui was speechless. Do you mean to make it more ridiculous, like pressing your own people into the water to make it more enjoyable? But I don't have any ideas. There's basically no room to modify the 3 moves of nothingness. Yin Nuoxing said, and then shook her head and sighed. She wanted to say something, but the space in front of her suddenly split open, and Sui Feng and Brother Lei's yelling came from inside. It seemed that they had moved a pile of scrap metal over. Let's just focus on creating order. We'll talk about my matter later. I'm almost at the end. If I want to get some new power, I might have to pay a more brutal price. Chapter 1916. The joys and sorrows of life, as well as the ups and downs of life, were nothing more than that. Picking up the world core left behind by the heavenly god of origins and seeing a bunch of stuff inside, he thought it was some sort of trump card, but it turned out to be just a warehouse, and one that had already been emptied. What was left behind was just a catalog of the warehouse. Well, it was just a small notebook, and it could be replaced with anything else. Well, you can't really say that, since it could also repair relics of origins, right? Ugh. So it was actually a repair station? Only heaven knows what Maple had picked up. Things were getting weirder and weirder, but no matter how weird it was, it could not change the fact that it was a relic of origins. Since it was a relic of origins, it had its own uses. Even if it was a repair station, it was a repair station used to deal with things of a higher standard. For example, normal people would not be able to fix the fortress of origins, and it would take them years to put the broken pieces back together. But with this thing, it seemed that it could be put back together quickly, right? Probably. Even if you ask me, I can't tell you what the answer is. I haven't used it before, and I'm just like you guys, preparing for acceptance. How would I know if it's a quick repair, or if it's still a slow repair with an automatic loading function? Yin was also puzzled by Huey's question. Shrugging, she said, "It didn't tell me everything in detail. Just show me the catalog, and that's enough. Don't push your luck." I think that's why it doesn't like to talk to me. If you want to know what other functions it has, you'll have to look for it yourself. Hui was speechless. That was a very stylish way of putting it, although he guessed that Maple was trying to say that Chio was not very obedient. After all, it was a thing that had been around for who knows how many years and was recently remodeled and stuffed with something, so it was normal for it to be a little bad or something else. The longer something was left, the easier it was for something unknown to others to happen. Ever since he knew that the primordial relic would also be tossed back and forth, he no longer believed in the saying that the primordial relic would not have any problems in the void. There are so many things that happened in the void that even the primordial gods themselves were in a terrible fix. There was the chaos era, the new era, the guide of order, and the traitorous ingrate. When all these things were put together, the mythical symbol of the primordial heavenly gods was crushed. Actually, after analyzing so many things, the myth of the heavenly god of origins seemed to be something that the beings of order had said themselves. After listening to Maple talk about the matters related to the heavenly god of origins, the more he heard, the more he felt that the heavenly god of origins was a group of hard-working people in the void of order. 147 of them toiled for more than 300 eras. They were so busy that they did not even have time to rest. They did not even have the time to take a breather, and the entire world of order had to jump around and stab each other in the back. They had to uphold the banner of order, rectify the void of order, and deal with the chaos. They were in a terrible fix. Well, actually, there was no such thing as a myth in the first place. It was just the imagination of the beings of order. It was undeniable that they had a very strong prestige in the world of order. They were full of majesty and were the embodiment of holiness. However, it was also this group of people who would definitely curse and swear when the chaos concept entity suddenly came to their doorstep. They would roll up their sleeves and rush forward to fight with the concept entity of order without the slightest hint of holiness. They would slap each other and bring disaster to their neighbors. In the end, they would make themselves look like a group of hooligans who got drunk and started a fight in a tavern. It just felt that it was not easy. It was not easy. No one in the void had it easy. Why are you sighing over there? Yin listened to Huey's inexplicable sighs. Her expression became a little strange. When she was helping Sui Feng and brother Lei widen the gap in the dimension, she quickly shouted at Hui, "Don't think too much. Quickly come and help. Go and move the things out." "Oh, this is the area. Wait a moment." Hui scratched his head and stuck out his tongue. He quickly walked into the gap. Back then, when they poured out the big pile of scrap metal, they never thought that there would be a day when they would have to clean it up again. If they had known this would happen, they would have marked it before they threw it down. That way, it would not be so troublesome when they moved it. Now, it was really difficult to move it all at once. The big and small pieces were tangled together and pulled at each other, making the whole pile look like an oversized garbage ball. While they were moving it, the garbage ball kept dropping debris. It was a piece of scrap metal with a radius of several thousand kilometers. The noise it made when it dropped debris was like a continuous rainstorm, and it was a rainstorm that could kill a person. But that was not the main problem. Sui Feng hurriedly helped to stabilize the whole thing. At the same time, he also floated around the room to collect the various fragments that fell like raindrops. He was so flustered that he almost fainted. He looked up at the trembling Chio floating above him and thought for half a second. Then he subconsciously shouted, "Little brother Foam, come and help me." These things are not easy to clean up. Yin Nuashing was still helping to stabilize the crack. Her face twitched when she heard Suifeng's words. Why is it so hard to move trash? It actually took a lot of effort for us to pour it out. It was like opening a floodgate to release a flood. Moreover, it took us 3 to 4 days to pour it all out. Suifeng smiled bitterly. He did not forget to clean up the debris in the air as he replied. These things carry the residual energy of the gods. It's not easy to clean them up. If we try to wrap them up like dumplings, it may be like fighting against the debris of the fortress of origin head-on. That's a bit too much. Bah, we're already in the process of making dumplings. Hurry up. Then how did you move them? Forget it, I'll go in and have a look. Yin Nuashing felt something was not right just by listening to Suifeng's words. She turned to Suifeng and the white-clothed girl and said, "Help me stabilize the crack. I'll go in and have a look." "Be careful," Suifeng suddenly replied. "Be careful." Yin Nuashing's face twitched. He had the mentality of picking up a garbage bag and throwing it out, but in the end, he was suddenly given such a warning. He instantly felt that the problem level of the matter was rising rapidly. The thing in his hand might not be garbage, but some strange, heavily polluted substance that could pollute the entire void with just 1 gram. When he turned back to look at them, good heavens, they even avoided his gaze, looking as if they could not bear to look at him directly. Those who did not know better would think that he was preparing to charge towards the chaotic concept body, and they could not bear to look at his miserable state, scaring him. Gulping, Yin Nuashing took a deep breath, and the origin energy began to surge. He began to mobilize the energy of the observer dimension, and began to prepare the sea of energy in advance. He was completely prepared to fight to the death with the chaos concept body as he slowly walked into the fissure. On the other side of the fissure was the space of the creation sanctum. The sky and space did not change much, and it looked calm and peaceful. However, the ground below was clearly a little different. There was a huge pit, as if it had been dug out by a huge shovel. Then, right above the pit, there was a huge metal ball floating, with a radius of thousands of miles still falling. Dozens of figures were flying around the huge metal ball like flies. Looking at their movements, it seemed that they were using all their strength to catch the falling pieces of the metal ball and then stuffing them back. It looked a little weird. Ugh, the whole scene looked like a dung beetle pushing out a cow dung ball and being surrounded. TSK, I don't want to talk about it. I'm going to be affected by Hui. However, the appearance of the ball, other than the color being completely different, was very similar in all other aspects. Even the uneven details on the surface were, forget it, I'm really not going to talk about it. The pile of scrap metal looked very strange. It was obviously a small pile of scrap metal that was dug out from the entire wasteland, but gave Hao Ren the same feeling as when he was pointed at by the staff of creation. Hao Ren's head buzzed, and he felt a little numb. The pile of scrap metal was emitting an energy that distorted the rules and order. Without anyone guiding it, the energy of origin was slowly gathering, and its strength seemed to be gradually increasing. Hao Ren seemed to know what the trouble Suifeng was talking about was, but how could this be? Why was this happening? Wasn't it just moving a bag of trash to another place? How could sloppiness cause such a huge commotion? Brother Foam, come and help. I can't hold on any longer. I'm under pressure that I shouldn't be under at my age. Brother Lei was floating on top of the metal ball. His hands were glowing with silver light as he pulled the metal ball below him. It seemed like he was trying his best to hang it up. It was just that he didn't know why he was doing this. He also didn't understand what these two people were doing. Why did they cause the situation to gradually become earth-shattering when they were asked to carry some things? If he didn't have 10,000 words to explain, he probably wouldn't be able to understand why throwing trash could cause earth-shattering momentum. What are you two doing? Yin Nuashing floated to Brother Lei's side and waved his hand to help him grab the metal ball. Once he held it in his hand, he was stunned for a moment. His expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly mobilized more energy to withstand the huge pressure on his body. This D*MN origin energy, when did it become so violent? This D*MN weight, if this thing was thrown out, it would probably flatten the void. I just asked you to move the trash over. You don't have to make such a big move, right? No, no, no. This really isn't caused by our subjective consciousness. With Brother Fang's help, Brother Lei immediately felt that the pressure was reduced by half. He heaved a sigh of relief. It's convulsing on its own. What's going on now? Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes. Is this origin relic ever going to end? Can't you just give me a quick death and reduce the commotion? To put it in the simplest terms, because the trash piles are too close to each other, they start to become restless. Brother Lei scratched his head. We experienced it when we poured it out previously. At that time, the commotion wasn't as big, but we still struggled for a few days before we found that it was fine if we spread it out far away. We spent a lot of effort to pull it apart one by one and spread it all over the space. Can you please be frank? I don't understand. I'm not particularly sure about the specifics. Feng mentioned before that it seems to have something to do with the fortress of origin itself. You see, it was dismantled under normal circumstances, but it's still in its normal condition. So that thing is still in its normal condition. And then there's that thing, and this thing, I don't know what it is. Although she did not know what that thing was, Yin Nuoxing understood the cause of the incident. Can't you guys move it bit by bit? Oh, I can't. This space, created by the Sanctuary of Creation, is also a space with origin energy and origin rules. The rules and concepts of the two are similar, so they can't overlap. They can only cover each other. Forcibly covering each other would cause a conflict, and there's a lot of stuff here that can't be dismantled and rebuilt. What's wrong? It's stuck. Yin Nuoxing was stunned for a moment as she thought that she had finished speaking. Then, she dragged the topic back to the beginning. So can't you guys move it bit by bit? Oh, you can't. Brother Lei did not know whether to laugh or cry. We've actually been very careful. We've only made a small ball and never thought of doing a lot at once. That's not that big, is it? Look, it's not even the size of a planet. How would we know that it would suddenly go out of control? It's that. The second-level defense of the Fortress of Origin. This defense is evenly distributed throughout the entire Fortress of Origin. In other words, every piece of the Fortress of Origin contains origin energy related to the second-level defense. If you accidentally put too many together, it's easy to cause this situation, and it will gather bit by bit. Didn't I say it before? Su Weifeng's busy voice with a hint of cursing quickly rang from below. Hurry up and do it when you're done talking. Don't just stand there. Oh, that's pretty much it. Brother Lei recalled and clapped his hands. It means that as long as you make it big enough and it collapses into a ball, it means that this situation has already happened. You remember what happened with the Staff of Creation last time. Remember how they looked when they gathered together? It's pretty much the shape of a ball, so it makes sense that we deliberately spread them out. Yin Nuoxing did not understand the difference between a ball and a plane, unless the second-level defense was also a ball-shaped barrier. That's not right. Even if that's the case, it doesn't seem to make sense. Why don't you open up a little more? Do your gods like to play with balls too? It's because of the direction of the origin energy flow. It has nothing to do with whether it's a ball or not. The gods are not masters of ball making. They're different from you, Brother Feng. Sui Feng smiled bitterly. If the fragments are spread out evenly, the origin energy will only be bound to the fragments themselves and spread in all directions. It will constantly wander and disperse. Although there's a tendency for it to gather together, the tendency for it to disperse is greater than the tendency for it to converge. However, if it's accidentally squeezed into a ball, it will be separated from the other fragments. Oh, I understand now. The origin energy will instantly converge towards the center of the ball. Yin Nuoxing hugged his arms and said, oh, no wonder Sui Feng and the others were picking up the shards and throwing them in with all their might. It seemed like they were trying to increase the weight of the shards bit by bit to slow down the speed of its origin energy gathering. But wasn't this like making a bomb? A certain amount of fragments would easily cause the origin energy to go out of control and converge. Throwing more fragments would slow down the speed of the origin energy gathering. Well, it seemed that they knew that the situation was out of control, so they were desperately increasing the number of fragments to forcibly slow down the speed of the origin energy gathering. While they were chatting, the origin energy accumulated inside the ball had already begun to change in a chaotic direction. Yin Nuashing looked at it for a while and quickly said, "So what should we do now? Tear it apart?" "No, no, no. Don't tear it apart. Don't tear it apart." Brother Lei and Sui Feng hurriedly shouted in unison. "Hurry up and drag it over. Then, before it becomes even more irritable, hurry up and move more fragments over to disperse the origin energy gathering. Then it'll be fine. Use your explosive power. Don't worry about breaking it. This is the origin energy gathering, and it's in a defensive state. It's much harder than you think. It's very hard. It's like a stinky rock rooted in the ground, the kind that can't be moved," Sui Feng said quickly. "But it's too heavy. We can't move it over. We need a lot of strength." Yin Nuashing quickly turned around and shouted at the other side of the crack, Sui Feng, hurry up and move away from the center. It's time for delivery." After he shouted, he dropped down a distance and gathered all the origin energy on his feet. He twisted his waist and flew towards the center of the ball. "Go, you bastard!" Bang! There's a loud explosion that sounded like a blast inside the skull. That was the energy conflict between the origin energy and the explosion of the origin energy. The violent storm caused the entire ball to rush into the crack. The storm also blew the 10,000 people who were working hard to transport the goods to the ground and pressed them heavily onto the garbage heap. Instantly, there was a wave of wailing and howling. As far as the eye could see, at least half of the people were flattened on the ground and embedded in porcelain. Hui was paralyzed on the ground, rolling around and shouting, "Foam, you have to give me a work injury. Work injury." As soon as Yin Nuashing landed on the ground, he saw thousands of people upside down. When he heard what Hui said, he stumbled and almost fell. Ah! This Sui Feng crawled out of the trash heap in a sorry state. His face darkened as he muttered to Feng Luo, "Brother Feng, you shouldn't accidentally hurt your own people. Look at the injuries of more than 10,000 people. When are you going to settle them?" Yin Nuashing, everyone already knew what kind of person their Sir Feng was. Explosions and accidental injuries were all traditional skills, regardless of the battlefield. A Sir Feng who didn't cause accidental injuries wasn't Sir Feng, and a Sir Feng who didn't cause explosions definitely wasn't himself. "You guys, hurry up and send the next fragment over. The energy here is rioting and leaking at the same time." "Rioting? No, leaking is more important. Feng Ling, hurry up and arrange the rules in order." Sui Qing's hurried voice came from the other side of the fissure. Over 10,000 people quickly jumped out of the ground. Because of their previous experience of fooling around, this time it was a piece of cake for them to make a ball. Yin Nuashing ran back quickly. First, she fixed the rules of the concept-level space that the World Core cast. Then, she suppressed the leaking origin energy and ran back. Then, she quickly kicked the ball that she had just made. Then, she went back to deal with the two lumps that collided and began to pile them into a pile of non-circular fragments. After a while, she found that with the addition of these two piles of scrap metal, the speed of energy consumption seemed to have increased by more than 20%. Shocked, she quickly took out the spare world light orb and threw it into the world core. Then, she rushed back to the creation sanctum. After running back and forth 5 or 6 times, Yin Nuashing was stunned. "Why am I running back and forth? Make it bigger. If you make it bigger, the energy gathered will be more. It's okay. Keep rubbing. Keep rubbing. You can even make the entire plane." Sui Feng smiled bitterly. "That's too heavy. I can't." After running back and forth for hundreds of times, the colorful plane that filled the space of the creation sanctum was finally all moved. The whole process was basically getting faster and faster. If they were not faster, something would happen, and it would happen at the same time. In both spaces, as the number of fragments in the observer space increased to a certain level, the speed of energy gathering gradually decreased from the top. It slowed down a little, but just a little. However, because the number of fragments in the creation sanctum was too small, there were no more fragments to share the origin energy. They began to gather the origin energy, and their shape was also changing little by little. In the end, when the number of fragments on both sides was basically the same, it meant that both sides were gathering energy at the same speed. Moreover, the creation sanctum was actually more spectacular. In order not to let all the fragments gather in a pile so that they could not be moved, Sui Feng and the others divided them into more than 100 pieces. More than 100 people used all their strength and almost could not pull a broken ball. They wanted to gather together and integrate into a bigger piece. If it was not for the observer who said that he was ready to release rules, order, energy form to solve all the fragments in the creation sanctum at once, they might have really let the fragments integrate themselves. What a joke. If he used that form and kicked the shards over, the impact of the collision between the two energies would be enough to blast them into the chaos void. They did not want to go through the experience of being embedded in the ground every time they sent a shard over. However, they could not hold on for long in the last period of time. Yin Nuoxing had to kick the shards over with all his might to solve the problem. It could be said that their progress had soared from 50% to 100% in an instant. Although he knew the cause and effect, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but sigh when he saw with his own eyes that the violent fragments at both ends just now calmed down after coming together. My foot is swollen from a kick. Everyone turned to look at him. At this moment, his right foot was indeed a little trembling. However, they were more impressed by the little angel who hung on him from beginning to end without any movement. They had not forgotten the feeling of being embedded in the ground dozens of times by the impact of the origin energy. She, who was in the middle of the impact, was actually fine. Speaking of which, he was also very good at working with a blanket over him. The relic of origins and whatnot, including you guys from the origin family, are all good at creating surprises and trouble. The bigger the surprise, the bigger the trouble, and vice versa. Yin Nuoxing hugged her right foot and kept shaking it. Good children, if you have nothing to do, stay away from the relic of origins. This thing is not worth the trouble. I think it's quite worth it. We shook his hand and rubbed his arm. He did not know if the tiredness all over his body came from being busy picking up rubbish or being embedded in the ground too many times. Although it's a little tiring, it's more than tiring. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes so hard that her eyeballs could not be seen. Every time she dealt with the relic of origins, she felt like she was messing around. All in all, the origin family has always been good at creating trouble and surprises. And surprise and trouble always coexist. The latter will always be more than the former. Brother Feng, you're also from the origin family. Sui Feng reminded him with a dry cough. Yin Nuoxing crossed her arms and took a deep breath. I am a troublemaker, and I'm always a troublemaker. Everyone was speechless. Well, that was self-destructing. The fortress of origin that had been moved into the observer's conceptual space had just recovered from the shock of being torn into two parts. When the chaotic and dangerous origin energy slowly calmed down, the entire space suddenly emitted a huge amount of energy. Looking at the energy movement, if there was no accident, it should be some kind of conceptual power released by this conceptual space. It's starting to repair, Sui Feng whispered. Sui Feng whispered, unable to hide the surprise in his voice. Although I don't know how long it'll take to repair the fortress of origin, I'm sure it'll be much faster than us doing 3D jigsaw puzzles. We still have to search for the fragments ourselves, but the realm knows where each fragment belongs to, and it also knows a safer way to repair it. I don't think it'll happen again when we accidentally put the two cores of the Staff of Creation together. At the mention of this, Yin Nuoxing, who had just yawned, was stunned. She quickly turned her head and said, "The Staff of Creation." The 1,000-feet-wide ball of light, which had been torn apart into the shape of an octopus, was still floating there quietly. There was no sign of it being repaired. Yin Nuoxing was relieved. I thought it was going to be repaired too. I haven't finished studying it yet. We felt that something was wrong. That's not right. Won't the Staff of Creation be repaired? Ah, that's definitely not it. Sui Feng quickly shook his head. He took the world core over and pondered for a moment before nodding. It's because of Brother Feng. Yin Nuoxing was stunned for a moment. She frowned. Because of me? Subjective consciousness? Yes. We dragged the Fortress of Origins here to repair it, so we started when we arrived. However, the Staff of Creation was just dismantled, so we didn't repair it for you because you still needed time to study it. Sui Feng nodded. After all, it's a part of your soul. Logically speaking, your subjective consciousness should be able to affect it, just like how it affects yourself. Yin Nuoxing's expression changed. It's over. Judging from the frequency of dangerous thoughts in my head, I'm afraid there will be a day when everyone. Traditional arts should not be performed in this place, right? Let's not do it, right? But is it okay to put the Fortress of Origins back together and ignore the Staff of Creation? We asked again. If I remember correctly, the two are together, right? Oh, it's fine. Like I said before, the Fortress of Origin has its own disintegration mode, which ensures that it will be stable when it's disintegrated. It's just that it's operating in a different way. The Staff of Creation is undoubtedly one of the most important parts, so there won't be any problems. When the time comes, we can even decide whether to put it back together. Putting it back together should solve the problem of energy recharge. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath. Just as her mind was about to turn, Sui Feng waved his hand. That probably won't work. Have you forgotten that the core of the Fortress of Origins is gone? The energy source we have now is a weakened and castrated version of the concept-level energy source that the gods created. I'm actually starting to worry about whether it can power the Fortress of Origins. We smiled bitterly. When he first found out about the energy source, he thought that he could solve the problem of the most important energy source of the Fortress of Origins. He did not expect that when he learned more, it became clear that the problem had never been solved. Yin Nuoxing crossed her arms and tapped her fingers on her arms. It's fine. I have an additional idea. When the word additional popped out, everyone shuddered. We turned around, sweating profusely. Feng, you have to think twice. Wait for me to finish. We was very excited. You don't have to finish. We all know that it must be a traditional three-piece or multi-piece set of arts. The calmest person present was still the girl in white. She looked at him and said calmly, "You first." Yin Nuoxing heard that and looked at the Fortress of Origins that was being put back together with great interest. When the Fortress of Origins is put back together, I'll take it apart. Everyone was speechless. They knew it. Chapter 1917. Since the Fortress of Origin was broken, he couldn't dismantle it right now. Even if he dismantled it, he would only get a pile of trash. Moreover, this time, it would really become trash. Therefore, it wasn't realistic to do anything to the Fortress of Origin right now. He could only wait until it was put back together and its core structure was complete before dismantling it to get a complete core structure. Only then would he be able to see some clues from it. Ah, yes, this was the moment he had been waiting for. When it was broken into pieces, he would call a pile of scrap metal. When it was put back together and restored to its original form, he would destroy it. Just the thought of it was delightful. Ahem, just the thought of it was a little. All right, he would not add more scenes for himself. The movement of the Fortress of Origin in its recovery state was a little similar to the movement caused by the Staff of Creation. It stirred up a storm, lifting countless fragments off the ground and gathering little by little at a place thousands of miles above the ground, as if there was a huge eye of the storm. The storm that stirred up the space was attracting the fragments of the Fortress of Origin, gradually forming rings there. There were 200 to 300 rings of fragments of various sizes inside and outside, and as the colorful luster of the Origin energy flickered, it looked like a gorgeous star ring. Perhaps because the concept realm was guiding the entire process, the flow of the Origin energy became smoother and no longer caused a riot like before. The only thing he had to worry about was the problem of the realm's energy consumption. The world orbs he had just thrown in were now about to be drained. He did not know how many he had thrown in, probably 7 or 8, or maybe 11 or 12. Either way, it was definitely not a small number. But it had only been half an hour since it started, and it was already drained. As expected, all creations related to the origin were huge energy consumers. None of them were easy to deal with, but this was the only time he wished they could be more efficient. Damn it, that rate of energy consumption, that rapidly disappearing energy, was enough for him to pour. Well, the energy of 11 or 12 world orbs was probably not enough for him to pour for 3 to 5 hours if he did not consider fighting and replenishing at the same time. He was also a huge energy consumer himself, so he would not compete with the origin creations. But then again, the advantage of having multiple world orbs was that it could restore energy at the same time, which would make it faster. He could at least fight and recover energy at the same time, but the concept realm only cared about exiting but not entering, and it would be difficult to maintain the balance between the two. Well, at this point, he knew what to do. If he could not maintain the balance between entering and exiting, then he would use a huge amount of energy to fill the gap. That being said, it was self-evident what a huge amount of energy meant. His sea of energy. He had just thrown in a bunch of energy sources, and now it was going to be sucked dry while he was still replenishing his body. What a tragedy. This sea of energy is really full of twists and turns, one after another. We saw Maple sigh as if he had accepted his fate. With a wave of his hand, he mobilized the energy of the sea of energy and threw it into this concept-level space. We couldn't help but sigh bitterly. How long will it take for your trump card to recover? Yin Nuashing glanced at him and sighed faintly. I think the sea of energy may be the last to be fully prepared. Just look at the situation now. All we have to deal with are origin relics, and all of them require a huge amount of energy to deal with. The sea of energy that I have painstakingly prepared for 5 eras has been sucked dry 2 or 3 times. Everyone could not help but smile bitterly. This was the trump card that was prepared the earliest, and it may also be the trump card that was expended the earliest, and it would be expended continuously. In other words, it should also be the trump card that was prepared the last. Before all the other trump cards that were upgraded and adjusted based on it were done, the sea of energy would not have a moment of peace. Yin Nuashing knocked on her head with a headache. I still have to find a way to use the energy sources to adjust the structural roots of the sea of energy and forcibly raise its level. That should relieve some of the pressure. Hui said, "Aren't you afraid that you'll pull it too high in one go? When you're done, you'll have a hard time adjusting it and it will be disjointed or something. Although it's not right to say that, you're really counting on the sea of energy to prolong your life. That won't happen. I'm dealing with those energy sources now. Although I can't say that I'm completely at ease, I can grasp about 50 to 60% of them when I use them. Furthermore, I don't intend to directly replace the energy sources with the structural roots of the sea of energy, just a small part of it. It's not a big problem," Yin Nuashing said with a frown. "But it's now back to a very large scale. If I don't use a part of it and directly adjust and replace the roots, it'll take a lot of effort. I'll just let the concept-level space consume a part of it. That's not right. I've just thrown in 7 or 8 energy sources. How can it be used up? Forget it. I'll just move 2 or 3 energy sources and let them immediately begin to adjust the structural roots of the sea of energy. It'll just slow down the recovery speed of the sea of energy and speed up its consumption. Then it'll be easier to change it. Let's do it." Huey's mouth twitched as he listened to Yin Nuashing's mutterings. Listening to this series of thoughts, this constantly changing train of thought, the changes in the sea of energy were all forced out. Yin Nuashing had just adjusted the structural roots of the sea of energy not long ago and did not have the intention to change it again for the time being. But suddenly, the concept-level space rushed out and forced him to upgrade again. He thought that the sea of energy would be changed and adjusted many times in the future. After all, it was a trump card used to create trump cards. It was the most important path of the entire trump card series. If something went wrong, it would not be good. This was the lifeline of the Void's frontline combat force. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment. She subconsciously turned her head and was covered in feathers before she turned to Hui. "I have a feeling that you had some strange thoughts just now." "No, You're getting better at muttering in other people's minds. I just heard a third of it. Don't think that I didn't hear anything. Although I didn't hear the last part that seemed to be very important. Hui was sweating profusely. I was just complaining a little about the sea of energy. Look at how the child is being forced. Ah, this. Yin Nuoxing rubbed her forehead, her pretty face looking troubled. There's no other way. After all, this is the foundation of our future combat power. Now, we need the energy of the sea of energy to deal with the origin relics. Without it, if the sea of energy structure is severely damaged, we can only stay where we are for at least 80 to 80,000 years. We will stop developing and explode on the spot. Once we're done, the new exploding soldiers will most likely become useless. Although 80 to 80,000 years doesn't sound like a lot, and there's indeed a limit to our development at this level, it seems like 80 to 80,000 years is not a lot, but sometimes we are racing against time, right? What if something happens during this period of time? Yin Nuoxing, I have a very curious question. Hui pointed at the turbulent sea of energy below. What is the level of the energy level of this sea of energy? I feel that it is stronger than your own energy. Of course, with the 147 origin energies that I now control as a foundation, there is no way it would be weaker than itself after countless changes, adjustments, and enhancements. Just look at how much I've poured into it, and you'll know. Everyone did a mental calculation. Destructive energy, offensive chaotic rules, world lights that were destroyed by the precursors of void turbulence, void concept fragments, not mixed with the concept class power, countless world lights and world fragments that carried all kinds of things, and so on. In short, a lot of things were thrown in. It was a big mess, and probably only the concept class power was not mixed in. Concept level power, Yin Nuoxing, was muttered by them, and his mind was suddenly enlightened. His thoughts were unimpeded, as if he had eaten croton. You said that I should take down the entire concept level space and throw it in, or take apart the concept level barrier and throw it in. Everyone was speechless. She really did not want to do anything related to humans. Suifeng came up and said, "No, Yin Nuoxing, let's not talk about whether this method will work. The concept class power is not something that can be touched so easily. Even if it is touched, we can't use the concept class power. When the time comes, the concept class power will occupy a part of the trump card, and there is no way to convert it into power. It will become a smelly and hard rock blocking the latrine." Yin Nuoxing slapped her forehead and said, "Oh, I have mentioned this myself. It seems that my thinking is slipping, and there are signs of a mudslide. The power of concept wasn't something that would cause a qualitative change just by touching it. Ah, that wasn't what I meant. Any creation touched by the power of concept would definitely be forcefully raised by who knows how many levels. However, it wasn't as easy to use as the power of order and rule. Even a life form that didn't control the power of order and rule would be able to use the power of order and rule. However, the power of concept was different. This thing, to put it in simpler terms, it was an extra existence to the creation and life. For example, the 4 shells of the staff of creation were added, but they were not useless. They were just as important. Back then, Suifeng did not bring the 4 shells with him when he blasted the void, and his whole body sank into the void. It was more or less an extra existence. In the face of concept class power, the power of order and rule was like a weapon of mass destruction that could be casually handed to a child. A wave of the hand could cause tons of casualties. But concept class power, which also had great or even greater destructive power, came with a natural safety lock. Those who did not know the right way would not be able to use it to set off fireworks, even if they held it in their hands. Suifeng snapped his fingers and said, "That's the gist of it." It was still too early for us to come into contact with concept-level power back then. What the teacher said was just like a theoretical lesson. It went in one ear and came out the other. How much we could understand would be the best. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. If you had been more serious in class back then, you would not be here today, treating others as guides. You are the only ones designated by them, the guides of the order and void of this era. Brother Lei slapped himself in the face. I'm sorry I'm a weakling. Sui Feng made the same gesture. Sorry, Yin Nuoxing said. Sorry my ass. Stand in front and lead the way. I'm sorry to disturb you. I don't deserve. Sui Feng's head was almost hidden in his collar. I'm just a child. I can't bear the responsibility of this era. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. So this bunch of idiots were suppressed in the soul-subduing ring. Even their IQ and age were suppressed for a few eras. The girl in white sighed, which was rare. The soul-subduing ring, to us, is a heavy injury. We can't fulfill our responsibilities. The soul-suppressing ring, is indeed a very important reason. Originally, I should have been able to continue growing in the sealed space. However, after being delayed for a few eras, I was slightly injured. Sui Feng scratched his head and said, but that's not necessarily the case. Even if we take into account the epics and assume that we're all high-level primeval, Brother Feng, you should still be the one leading the void frontline. After all, you're the one who started it all. It's not good for us to take over the nest of a magpie. Even in the current situation, if we don't find the void frontline when we come out, and the realm of order is fighting against chaos in a rather chaotic situation, or the void frontline we set up is a useless product, we will still do our part. As the gods wish, even if we are not very competent, we will still try our best to lead the void of order forward. But under the premise that there are already qualified guides in the void of order, we shouldn't blindly get involved, right? Isn't it nice to just play a supporting role? No, it's reasonable. Do we look like guides to you? Do you think your guides will think about setting the void of order on fire every day? Yin Nuoxing pointed at herself with a look of astonishment. Don't tell me you guys are thinking of me as that miserable god of creation? What? The one who was forced to take charge because no one wanted to. Cough, 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 cough. Sui Feng coughed violently. It's really not. It's really not. The reason is what I just said. It's the answer we came up with after the first discussion after we came out. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes. All right, I'll believe you. After all, I'm not the one in charge. Hui Gang was still watching the show from the side. When he heard that, he widened his eyes and pointed at himself. So you guys are torturing me in the end? But I also want to slack off. Yin Nuoxing gave him a knock on the head and put her hands on her hips. This is the void front line that you set up. I'm here to play a supporting role. In the end, I'll be busier. Hui Gang grimaced. You're the #1 combat force. What's wrong with being in charge? The combat force is all second in command. I don't care. She said so. Everyone was speechless. That's what the god of destruction thinks, right? Well, there's no way to refute that. The group of people kicked the ball around for quite a while. When something else happened in the Fortress of Origin, Yin Nuoxing suddenly destroyed the ball and the pot. She waved her hand and said, let's not talk about this anymore. You guys go and see how the Fortress of Origin is put together. I'll go and adjust the sea of energy in the heart of the world. Watching as Maple disappeared into the sea of energy in an instant, Hui Yin did not have the time to say anything. He scratched his head at Sui Feng and the others and gave a few instructions to the people who had been busy for years to disperse or return to the front line or rest. Then he said to them, what do we do now? Nothing much. I'm just watching. Sui Feng turned to look at the storm of metal rings. As the repair process progressed, the storm of metal rings became even more shocking. Now, all they could see was a dense cloud of colorful mist, all of which were fragments that had been swept thousands of miles into the air. The parts in the sky were already packed densely, but the huge pile of fragments floating in the space above the sea of energy did not seem to have decreased. We want to help and speed things up, but if we help with our own natures, we'll probably be more of a hindrance. The heart of the world of Origin's repairability is much smarter than ours. We might not be able to find a matching fragment, even if we work for half a year there, but here it can connect them in just a second or two, and a bunch at that. We lost because we don't have knowledge. We slapped his head and sighed. Then he paused. That's not right. We don't have knowledge in the first place. It's basically impossible for us to have knowledge. That's a product of the previous era. It's your family's plaything. It has something to do with me. and it's something that happened a few years ago. I'm the kind that was forced to accept it. After all, I've been beaten up by Maple too many times, so I have no choice but to accept it. I understand now. After all, before they were packed up and thrown into the soul-suppressing ring, they were just a bunch of immature brats. Most of the time, Her Eminence was teaching them about things that they would only encounter in the future. Since they were only mentioned, then they were basically just listening to it. Occasionally, they would even have to skip class. But they never thought that they would have to face such a situation the next time they returned to the orderly void. It was like listening to a bunch of theory lessons, and they were not necessarily able to connect all the pieces together. They did not even have the time to try it out before they had to do real work. This was probably skipping 7 or 8 steps. But they never thought that they would have to face such a situation the next time they returned to the orderly void. It was like listening to a bunch of theory lessons, and they did not even have the time to try it out before they had to do real work. This was probably skipping 7 or 8 steps. That was to say, reality, no, the void, would never wait for you to be ready before rushing to your face. Everything that happened was not going according to plan. And from what Brother Maple had heard from the gods, their attitude was probably, hey, you guys are mature second-generation heirs now. You have to find a way to do something proper. What? Something happened to the ring of soul suppression? It's not a big problem. You guys still have to do something serious. It's a little boring. Forget it. It was better not to think about such things and just get back to work. Although they were watching the Fortress of Origin recover on its own in the conceptual space, there were things they could do as well. Such as tidying up the pile of shards that was still stuffed all over the place. Just like flipping over the ground, they would flip the stuff up and try their best to increase the number of movable shards so that the conceptual space could be tidied up faster. Flipping the ground, I get it. It's like plowing the ground. I think we have another role now. Hui suddenly said that as he squatted on the ground and tidied up the debris, causing Sway Foam and the others to shudder. That bastard's mouth was really idle and sarcastic. They could not let CU hear that, or there would be another weird nickname for them. Huey's hand that reached into the pile of debris suddenly grabbed something. It looked like a long rope. He tested it with a little force, and it seemed to be stuck. When he was about to pull it out with his hands, he only needed to use a little more force to pull it out of the ground. There was also a pop sound. It was a string of long strips about the thickness of an arm. He didn't know what it was, but it looked like a rope. Its overall color was different from the surrounding colors, like the faint purple luster of the nebula in the night sky, a bit like the light purple of the shallow void. One end of it was hanging on his hand, and the other end was still rooted under the earth. As he pulled it, a series of faint echoes sounded. Hui was very curious. He alternately pulled it out of the ground section by section. The rope that was pulled out of the ground at the back fell to the ground and collided with the debris pile, making a series of crisp sounds like the swaying of wind chimes. It didn't sound like a heavy object, but he could feel that this rope was obviously heavy in his hand. Hey, come over and see what I dug out from the ground. Whether it was the color or the feeling, this thing was different from the debris of Fortress of Origin. Hui quickly shouted at Sway Foam and the others. He could not recognize this thing. Hearing the commotion, Sway Foam and the rest hurriedly threw down the things in their hands and ran over. Then, they saw Hui Jun's hands dancing wildly as if she was performing a magic trick, desperately pulling out sections of rope from the ground one after another. It was as if that thing was endless. The wind chimes that rang when the rope fell to the ground had a continuous crackling sound, causing them to be stunned. What did you pull out? Brother Lei walked forward and stretched out his hand to pull the big pile of rope. The things that Hui Jun pulled out from the ground were piled up to a height of 3 to 4 meters, covering an area of several feet. I don't know. How would I know what this is? It's your family's thing. I'm only in charge of finding things. I don't have the ability to recognize it. After all, I'm at a disadvantage because I'm uncultured, Hui said jokingly as he continued to pull the things on the ground. Don't bring that up. We really have no other choice. We simply can't make it in time, and we can't make it in time. We're at a disadvantage because of time. Brother Lay smiled bitterly and shook his head. Every time this matter was brought up, they would become more haggard. Let's not talk about it anymore. Let's look at the pile of things that looked like chains on an abandoned ship's anchor. Feng, can you recognize it this time? How come I don't remember seeing this thing before? No, I can't do anything this time. Sui Feng shook his head vigorously and pulled the thing that looked like a rope or a chain. He pulled and shook it twice. There's origin energy. It's definitely something left behind by the gods. Sai, the things left behind in this place can only belong to the gods. It's probably mixed with the fragments of the fortress of origin and poured out together. But what is this? Weird, I don't have any impression of it. Sis, Shi Sheng, do you recognize this thing? No, both of them answered. The two of them answered very straightforwardly. This time, they did not seem to have any impression of it at all, which made them feel a little troubled. If it was something that none of them recognized, it was very likely that it was not something that was used in the war between order and chaos in the previous era. Sui Feng scratched his head. Should we ask the others to identify it? Sai, no need. Have you forgotten this place? I still remember what Feng said just now. We saw that they really could not do anything about it. He shrugged and threw the thing on the ground. Gathering his breath in his dantian, he found Feng through the soul message and shouted at the top of his lungs. Feng, come up quickly. We've dug out a strange vine. These unreliable guys can't even figure it out. Come up quickly and have a look. After shouting at the top of his lungs, Hui quickly entered a defensive state. He was fully armed and prepared to be beaten up. The last time he shouted at Maple Soul while he was working, he was kicked into the void. This time, he was also prepared. Phew, stop for a moment. I've just barely finished with the matter of the origin structure. Before I could even take a breath, Fine, what did you find this time? Feng's voice was heard before he arrived. It sounded helpless and a little haggard. A moment later, a portal opened in front of him, and a flood rushed out like a dam. When the water was all gone, Feng walked out with a pale face and a half-dead look. He was still covered in a down quilt. That girl was still hanging there. Why are you so haggard again? Hui was shocked to see that Feng had turned from a living person into a person who had crawled into the path of reincarnation in just half an hour. He was fine when he went out, but now... You guys made me anxious. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes and waved her hand. It's a little hard to forcefully match the origin structure and the origin structure of the sea of energy. Let's not talk about me first. This thing you guys found. It looks like a bunch of vines. Yes, it's this thing. What is it? Hurry up and have a look. Yun Nuashing frowned and touched the heart of the world in her hand. I remember glancing at it just now. It looked a little unique, but I didn't look at it carefully. I found it. How is it? Is it a rope for binding or something special? Hui leaned over with a curious and mysterious face and whispered in Feng's ear. Yin Nuashing was stunned. He stared blankly, and a strange feeling welled up in his heart. The turbulence in his heart was so great that it made them all startled. Hui immediately had a bad feeling. Say it, I'm ready. This is indeed an origin relic. Yin Nuashing's expression was strange. She looked away from a heart of the world and looked at everyone with an indescribable expression. But this is something that the origin heavenly god and the others gave to others. Also, this thing is not mass-produced. There are probably only 4 or 5 of them. Because they were specially made to give it to others, theoretically, this thing should not be in their hands anymore. At least that's what the records say. Plus, you guys have never seen it before, so it's almost certain that this is the case. Given to others, everyone's expression changed. Something given to others, and it was also an origin relic. If these two situations were mixed together, didn't that mean Yin Nuashing saw their expressions and said faintly, this is something that they threw down. Maybe they used this thing when they broke into the soul-suppressing ring. Maybe it was a road sign or a one-time consumable. They used it once and did not recycle it. This is evidence that they left behind. Chapter 1918. What happened back then and what happened with the soul-suppressing ring were all based on their theories, even though they were the only ones in the void who could reach the theoretical conditions. Even though their theories were basically the truth, since no one knew the bigger picture of the Order Void better than them, guesses were still guesses. Even if what they guessed really happened and the established facts were confirmed, before there was more direct evidence to prove that they really did something, guesses were still guesses. He didn't see it with his own eyes, so how could he know everything by deducing? It was just probability, and talking about probability with the void would be suicidal. Having a 1% suspicion wasn't a bad thing. Even though he said it with certainty, he still felt a little uncertain and unsettled in his heart. Now, the evidence that could prove that those elusive dog-like creatures were really up to no good was delivered to them. This matter could be said to have been settled, and there was no need for further debate. It was just that the way it appeared was a little out of their expectations. They didn't expect it to be mixed in with the fragments of the Fortress of Origin, nor did they expect Hui to pull it out so casually. They had clearly failed to find it twice in the previous 2 incidents. Indeed, sometimes it depended on luck. If we hadn't pulled it out, they might have been delayed for a while before they could touch it. They couldn't be sure that when the Fortress of Origin was quickly pieced together in the conceptual space, it might have been stuffed into its stomach. By then, it would have been placed in a corner of the Fortress of Origin or directly embedded into the wall. If it was the latter, there was basically no need to think about finding this criminal evidence. As for this thing, the evidence that they left behind to cause trouble, what was it? There's no explanation at all. Yin Nuoxing shook her head. Her words stunned everyone, and they asked in unison, "What do you mean by no explanation?" It's literally what it means. Yin Nuoxing waved the pale golden orb in her hand. The recorded information only mentioned that they had given this to them a long time ago, but did not specify what it was, nor was there a name or description of its effects. Either they had verbally told them what this thing was for, or they had let them figure out themselves. After that, this thing never returned to the continent of origin. It was only recorded by the World Core when the heavenly god of origin and the others created it, so there was no detailed record. Then, we stopped pulling the item out and frowned as he looked at the item in his hand. Doesn't that mean we have to figure out what this thing is for ourselves? Although I don't think it's worth the research, a rough test should be enough. Yin Nuoxing spread her hands. At that time, think about the heavenly god of origin and the other's purpose of cultivating them. If I'm not mistaken, this thing was used to deal with the concept body of chaos. Oh, that's true. We nodded. That was the only big goal that had lasted for countless years. Not long after the new era began, the primordial heavenly god and the others were obviously only used to the way they treated the beings of order during the era of chaos. Therefore, they probably did not change much. Speaking of which, thinking about the things that happened back then gave Hui a headache. His old father had painstakingly raised that kid up. Who would have thought that the kid would backstab his old father when there was no conflict between the two parties due to their different life experiences and viewpoints? That was really a filial thing that made people want to piss their pants. Still, it's rare to find a primordial creation that still maintains order from them. Suifeng stroked the string of items and sighed. These are the creations of the gods in the underworld. All of them have been covered with the power of chaos and have become quasi-chaos-type creations. Their power and order have undergone tremendous changes. The only thing that hasn't changed is the target. I thought that the original creations that fell into the hands of both sides had been twisted into the power of chaos. I thought that I would have to spend a lot of effort to deal with them when I have the chance to snatch them back. Yin Nuoxing thought for a moment before replying. Perhaps it was deliberately left behind. Like what I said when I talked to the heavenly god of origin and the others, they hold the power of the chaos concept body and can indeed destroy the gate of the soul subduing ring. But to find the soul subduing ring requires their own energy and breath. Therefore, when they were preparing to cause trouble, they and the underworld should still have some primordial relics with primordial energy. It would not be too late to change things after they find the soul subduing ring and the other escape routes left behind by the heavenly god of origin. After all, in the battle between order and chaos at the end of the previous era, there was no incident of order being beaten up by the primordial relics. They and the underworld must have hidden them well. As for their purpose, according to what your God has said, it is to leave a way out for this era, to steal and occupy other people's places as their own, to take over other people's places and leave them with no other way out. As for their purpose, according to what the gods of the underworld have said, they should have left a way out for themselves in this era. Everyone was speechless. They had never seen something so shameless before. In my opinion, apart from this purpose, the second purpose is to hide this from the heavenly God of origin. Yin Nuoxing tugged at the rope-like thing with both hands as if he was trying to break it. After a few tries and seeing that it did not respond, he withdrew his strength. His eyes glowed as he tried to decipher the use of this thing. If the primordial heavenly God and the others had seen their own creation appear in the hands of the enemy during that war, they would instantly know what had happened in the void and could immediately take remedial measures, or leave behind more arrangements, or directly change part of their escape route. To prevent this from happening, they have been holding back the part of their power that they could use, holding it in until they were suffocated to death. The relic of origin can also cause considerable damage to order. Just look at the staff of origin and the staff of creation. These two things could have turned a row of high-level primeval, be it order or chaos primeval, into ashes with a single shot. It would have been a great help back then, and if they had used it, the situation would have been different. Then, since such a situation didn't happen, Brother Thunder stroked his chin as he pondered. It's for the sake of safety, leaving a stable path of retreat. No matter how the war in our era ended up, they would have another stable path to take. Just like this era, holding back until this era to stir up trouble. There's almost no one in the Order Void who can stop them. What a good idea. In fact, the defeat of the previous era, or rather, the draw, was basically something that could be confirmed long ago. Just like the ending of the Chaos era, neither side lost, neither could win, forcing a draw. They were the main targets that the heavenly God of origin had groomed at the beginning of the new era, and they had also jumped ship to the void of chaos. The situation of both sides, the battle situation, and so on should have been clear. Yin Nuoxing said slowly as she pondered. After choosing a new faction, the blind spot of the other side's knowledge was filled. Although I think they could have known everything from the heavenly God of origin from the very beginning, well, knowing a little more would make it easier for them to make a choice. Hui shrugged. He knew what Maple was going to say, and so he spoke first, after understanding enough. And this time, with they themselves being the troublemakers, they could have triggered the war of the previous era and forced a draw. Or rather, an all-out war between order and chaos could only end in a draw. They only need to let the unprepared sides fight, and just make things happen. They don't have to worry about the rest, and they don't have to worry about it, even if they wanted to. Forcing it to happen is just annoying themselves. Sui Feng was puzzled. Isn't that still a draw? What's the difference? Triggering the war and ending it in advance. Yes, of course there's a difference, and it's the biggest one. Yin Nuoxing nodded. After 326 years of the Chaos era, both sides had their share of victories and losses, but overall it was a draw. Of the 441 Chaos conceptual bodies, more than 100 of them were sealed and did not emerge until the war of the previous era. So, it looked like Order had won by a small margin, but the final battle at the end of the Chaos era ended when the heavenly God of origin and the others hastily solidified the concept of the Void of Order. None of the Order life forms of the Chaos era were left alive, and so the victory was a draw. In conclusion, the Void of Order returned to its pre-liberation state, and more than 100 Chaos conceptual bodies went on strike. Now, let's look at the war at the end of the previous era. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath and narrowed her eyes, her tone becoming a little somber. The Void of Order was once again returned to its original state, and not much was left. The heavenly God of origin had all fallen and stepped into the cycle of reincarnation, while the Chaos conceptual bodies all went into seclusion. It was a draw where both sides perished. It's not wrong if you say that both sides lost. Sui Feng reacted after hearing that. Although the end of the Chaos era was also a draw, the core forces of both the Void of Order and the Void of Chaos were basically preserved. On the other hand, the outcome of the war between order and chaos in their era was the end of both eras, and it was needless to say which of the two draws was more tragic. They were aiming for such an ending, and the heavenly god of origin and the chaos conceptual bodies probably did not expect that. No, they did. They knew that as life forms standing at the apex of both voids, how could they not know that such a thing would happen? Yin Washing hugged herself with both hands and squeezed, almost being buried alive by the feathers. She could not help but roll her eyes. Why is this girl still clinging to me? Is she clinging to me? But even if they knew, they did not change it. Or rather, both sides were cooperating. In the 326 years of the Chaos Era, there must have been a lot of decisive battles, and this time is no different. It's just another decisive battle. Cooperating? Sui Feng was confused and could not figure out. Why? Hui whispered beside him. Fighting for 300 eras is just repeating the same result over and over again. Why don't they try to change the form of the result? Of course, it would be best if they could directly change the nature of the result. But if they could not change it, they could only change the form, although the result of this change would be very tragic. Sui Feng and the others were speechless. Can they change this? Just a change, and everyone would be finished. Isn't this change a little too violent? Everyone can think of an accurate result. Either order wins, or the great origin realm returns to the primal chaos era. When the primal chaos void takes over the entire realm, have you forgotten what Shuang Shuang said the other day? Yin Nuoxing plucked a feather from his face and twirled it between his fingers. He stared at the feather and seemed to be deep in thought as he said, "Destroy chaos and guard order." Think about it carefully. When the chaos epic ended and the void of order announced that it had turned into a concept and completely became a part of the great Yuan realm, the goal of guarding order had already been achieved. Even the concept body of chaos couldn't easily return the great Yuan realm to the state of the chaos epic. As such, there's only one goal left. Huey's cheeks twitched and his voice trembled a little. Destroy chaos. Now that the chaos conceptual bodies are almost completely wiped out, the goal is basically achieved, although achieved but not completely achieved. There are still fish that escape the net. Putting the feather on her ear, Yin Nuoxing breathed a sigh of relief. This is the result that can only be achieved for now. This is the extent of what they can do now. Them and the underworld are really unexpected. Their appearance has pushed the war that may last for countless years into another situation, a situation where the origin of order and the origin of chaos do not exist. Things are indeed different from the chaos era. This is a change, a small change in the overall situation. Yin Nuoxing paused for a moment and rolled her eyes. Although the origin of chaos is rising from the coffin, this is just another change brought by them. The former is what I said, something that both sides know. It is all within their expectations. As for the latter, it may be within the expectations of the chaos conceptual bodies. Those brainless fellows do not know what they are thinking. Let's just say that it is within their expectations for now. In theory, it is also within the expectations of the gods of origin. They knew that they were going to retreat, so they wanted to be prepared. However, the war was forced in the first place, and there was basically not enough time. They were in a hurry and did not have more time to prepare, so there was no way to do more. But just take a look at the 771 backups they left behind. Those are the foundations they left behind for the arrival of a new situation. They are backups they left behind for the future life of order to continue dealing with the forces of chaos when they aren't around. We stuck out his tongue, but those escape routes have basically collapsed. After all, it was something unexpected. By the time they realized that the situation had changed and began to cooperate with chaos to make changes, a lot of time had already passed. The main thing was that because there was not enough time, many things could not be done perfectly, so the escape routes they left behind were flawed and easy to go wrong. In the end, things really went wrong. Yin Nuoxing sighed. As I said just now, their appearance changed the situation of the war, so neither side had more time to prepare. We did not know the situation of the chaos conceptual bodies, so we just assumed that it was so. However, even without more time to prepare, the situation was still within their control. Both sides knew each other's purpose, so without prior agreement, they cooperated tacitly and fought what was probably the most tragic battle since the creation of the Grand Yuan realm. Both sides returned to silence. Order left the Order void, left a retreat route, and left part of their forces. Chaos left 2 traitors who were still in the dark. Oh no, now they're brazenly stirring up trouble. Order's purpose is similar to that of the gods of origin, to destroy chaos and guard order. On the other hand, chaos is about the same. While wreaking havoc in the Order void, they're also thinking of ways to make the chaos conceptual bodies collectively open their coffins. After going around in circles, the purpose of both sides has not changed. It is just that the roles involved in the script have changed. Naturally, the situation is no longer completely within their expectations. Naturally, there will be a different direction of things, a change that they expect. We clapped his hands excitedly. Commentator, even the situation of both sides has not changed. Order is still being suppressed by chaos. Well, Yin Nuoxing's pretty face twitched a few times. She let out a faint, bitter laugh. That's also. We snapped his fingers to sort out his thoughts. So, to sum it up, both the gods of origin and the chaos conceptual bodies know that if they continue fighting like this, there will be no end to the script. However, just like how life still has to be lived, this battle still has to go on. After all, both sides are born to be incompatible with each other, and it is impossible to stop until the other side's head explodes. Therefore, when the variable jumped out deliberately to stir up trouble, deliberately stirring up trouble when neither side was prepared, both sides started a fight at the same time. At first, it was just a small fight, and the situation could not escalate to the most intense level. However, as they fought, they suddenly frowned and realized that things were not as simple as they seemed. In a flash of inspiration, as if they had caught a glimpse of the overall direction of the Grand Yuan realm, they both predicted that there might be a new situation. Then, they took advantage of this variable and began to get busy, thinking hard about the void for millions of years. After determining the direction, they began to act in their own way, until finally both sides had a tacit understanding of each other after the battle, and both sides fell and walked the path of reincarnation together. Yin Nuoxing coughed softly. The chaos conceptual bodies do not walk the path of reincarnation. Then, both of them will leave the mortal realm and hand over the unfinished business to the people behind them. They will retire behind the scenes and become hands-off managers. Now, the void of order and chaos are still fighting each other, but they have changed their roles. This is the path that they have found through their cooperation. Although it is a little hasty, they still continue on this path. After all, both sides of people know that they can't achieve anything by fighting each other like this. At most, they will turn the Grand Yuan realm upside down. Something like that. Although they did not say it out loud, when I talked to them, I did mention some things that were close to the edge. And the feeling I got was that they were not surprised by the current situation at all. It is just as if they knew it would turn out like this from the beginning. Yin Nuoxing waved her hand and said softly, apart from those unexpected things, such as the soul-suppressing hoop. No, since they said that all 771 paths lead to death, they obviously expected a small part of it. Oh, yes, they did say that they expected it, but they did not know what kind of form or what kind of accident would happen. Sigh, these two sides of people know that there will be no change no matter how they fight, so they changed their way of tormenting the Grand Yuan realm. Hui knocked on his head and spread his hands. In the end, things did not change at all. Order and chaos are still fighting each other to the death. It is just that there is a new person and the situation has become smaller. Then, the two sides turn against order and void. Hui was stunned as he spoke. His gaze became strange as he pinched his chin and muttered to himself. I'm thinking something's not right. Both sides have collectively gone on strike and left the matter to the people behind to continue fighting. Order is still order, but on the side of chaos, although it is indeed chaos, but from the root, the essence, they are two traitors who ran over from order. Everyone was stunned. That's what happened. That's right. We suddenly jumped up and stomped on the pile of debris. The ground shook and the mountains shook. He cursed, "Hoo-hoo, I'm such a good guy. Times are changing. The situation is changing, and the situation is changing. Only the traditional skills of order have not changed. They are busy fighting each other and fighting each other every day. Isn't this still the civil war of order? Sui Feng and the others. That seems to be. Right, although that is indeed the case." Yin Nuoxing glanced at him and said, "Order should not treat those who join chaos as humans. Just treat them as chaos and beat them to death. Who cares if it's a civil war or not? No, this cannot be considered civil war. They have already been removed from order. If they are not treated as humans, they can't be treated as innocent people or be beaten to death. This cannot be considered a civil war of order. If this is a civil war, then the civil war in the real world can be considered flirting. That's a matter of degree. Aren't I talking about the essence?" We did not know whether to laugh or cry. He scratched his face and could not help but complain. This bloody berserk transformation is really tormenting. The transformation does not necessarily come from one's own subjective consciousness. Just as I said, it became like this under the guidance of them. With the tacit understanding and fate of the two groups of origins that have been fighting for over 300 eras, they would never stop once they started fighting. Instead, it would only get worse. Under such circumstances, they suddenly found a new path and walked on it without calculating the situation. Even they could only carefully test it step by step. The situation changed too suddenly, and they did not have the time to make sufficient preparations. It is not too surprising that it ended up like this. Yin Nuoxing shrugged his shoulders helplessly. However, the current situation is still quite. All right, it's also quite bad. The changes are too drastic, and there isn't any relief at all. Instead, they are still as violent as before. Furthermore, this time, order might have been suppressed even more thoroughly. Things are unpredictable. Things are unpredictable. Hui waved his hand and sighed, feeling exhausted. After a while, he looked up again. So they knew that things would turn out like this, so they did this. Then, do they know that the origin God and the concept body of chaos know their thoughts? I don't know. There's no way to know. We have never come into contact with them, so how would we know if they know about this? Yin Nuoxing shook her head. She felt a little strange when she saw Hui rubbing his chin in deep thought. Why? Are you concerned about this? I'm a little concerned. Hui smiled indecently. Think about it. The feeling of self-righteousness leading the war between the two deadliest groups in the void, that feeling of being in control of everything, that feeling is, well, that feeling. And then in fact, it has nothing much to do with them. Isn't it delightful just thinking about it? I really want to see their expressions when they know about this. What if they know about it, and they are expressionless? Then it won't be fun. Then it won't be delightful. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes at him and brought the conversation back to the original topic. No matter what, the current situation may be complying with them and achieving their goal. The origin of order and the origin of chaos have both left the battlefield at the same time. Next, it's time for them and the underworld to take control of the situation. At this time, they can use the backup plan that they left behind and take down the Order Void. I still feel that the underworld is a little strangely cowardly. Hui said, scratching his head. Every time I know that they have another type of origin power in their hands, I feel that they are even more cowardly. Look, the Staff of Origins and the Origin of Energy. Those two things could easily pierce through the void of order, and yet they are still cooped up at home, unhurried. God knows what they are doing. This matter. Now, there is a new explanation. Yin Nuoxing raised her hand to interrupt his thoughts. The last time I talked to them, we talked about this. The answer they gave was that the underworld is busy completing the unfinished business of the chaos, which is to destroy order. However, this is just a matter of convenience. Their main purpose is to prepare to deal with the realm of the gods. Everyone was stunned and shook their heads. I don't understand. The last sentence. Hui said directly, we have already drawn out all our forces. What else is there for them to prepare to deal with in the realm of the gods? By the way, what does this have to do with the realm of the gods? Yin Nuoxing thought for a moment and directly told them about the chaos conceptual entity, them, the underworld, and the divine shadows. In the end, she concluded, in short, we can't let the disobedient children who have been expelled from the family step into the family again. Otherwise, something big will happen. Now, to them, we're just an obstacle on their way back, and it is not a very strong obstacle. The reason why they have been preparing for so long. If it is not to deal with us, then it can only be to deal with. The girl in white looked up and replied, the defense of the realm of the gods, the defense of the venerables. Although they found something randomly to carry the seal, even if it was in a hurry, they must have left behind enough defense. Yin Nuoxing nodded and snapped her fingers. So, this explains why the underworld is taking so long. They can deal with us easily, but they may not be able to deal with the defense left behind by the primordial heavenly god. If they can't break through the defense, it will be useless even if they attack the realm of the gods directly. So, they can only prepare from the beginning, and when they are ready, it will not be too late to push them over. After all, we are just a small stone blocking their way. If they can push the realm of the gods away, they can naturally kick this small stone aside. Now, they just need to follow the steps to destroy order and continue to prepare for their own matters. Hui lowered his head for a long time. When they finished, he suddenly looked up with a sad face. Ah, my poor realm of the gods is going to be blown up again. Yin Nuoxing, right? You think so too, don't you? Ever since they were chosen by the primordial heavenly god, the realm of the gods had not had a day of peace. Chapter 1919. The unfortunate realm of the gods was not sure if it was born from the hands of the primordial god, but the realm of the gods had fully inherited their characteristics, the characteristics of being targeted by chaos and all kinds of troubles. Putting aside the fact that chaos was a nuisance to the order, those with a better memory would remember that the primordial god had mentioned several times about the recovery period at the beginning of this era. Based on their current understanding, that period referred to the period from the end of the mythological era until the end of the 42nd era. During that period, the Void was in a state of recovery from its severe injuries. At that time, the Void was in a state of deficiency. Energy, rules, order, and the like were deficient. Even the upper planes were no exception. But the only exception was the realm of the gods. The realm of the gods was personally created by the primordial god. Even if the realm of the gods had experienced the void turbulence, it was just a layer of skin that was burnt. The burnt part would naturally recover bit by bit along with the revival of all things. As for the skin peeling, it was not a big problem. At most, it was just a layer of skin on the surface, and everything that grew on the skin would be completely wiped out. The divine realm was the fastest to recover during the recovery period. At least, it had already recovered to a certain extent by the time Joshua was born. However, the outer worlds, be it the current stars or the void, were far inferior. Even the upper planes were in tatters. It was as if the vast ocean had turned into a wasteland in the blink of an eye. Miraculously, there was a small pool left in the wasteland. Beside the pool was a flourishing oasis. It was a real oasis in the void at that time. So under those circumstances, coupled with the traditional skills of order. There's no need to elaborate on what happened. I've already mentioned it before. If you don't remember, I'll just say it again. To put it simply, the billions of hungry beings wandering in the wasteland saw an oasis suddenly appear in front of them. The next second, they charged towards the oasis without a care in the world. That was the case for the divine realm at that time. It was the only oasis in the vast wasteland coveted by countless beings. Those who came with no ill intentions were naturally not a problem for the divine realm. But generally speaking, with the external visitors, the terrible environmental rules, and the situation of strength in numbers, it would be a disgrace to the divine realm and order if nothing out of the ordinary happened. In fact, the number of beings who came with no ill intentions was probably less than 10%. The rest came with the intention of causing trouble. There were records of them causing a lot of trouble, big or small, and even more were beaten up by the people of the divine realm after causing trouble. At that time, the divine realm was also in a period of rapid recovery and development. It was a mess, with 5 major regions fighting each other every day. Groups of foreign visitors came one after another. Countless major sects and factions climbed up from the ground, collapsing and popping up again. The rise and fall of the divine realm was never-ending. At that time, Joshua was just a nameless junior. Although the world knew about him and Maple, there were no guardians or observers. There was also no one who could speak for the divine realm. There were internal and external troubles, and everyone did their own thing. There were those who only cared about internal strife and did not care about external strife. There were also those who were busy with external strife and did not care about external strife. There were also those who were busy with external strife and did not care about external strife. Back then, they only cared about external strife and did not care about internal strife. Fortunately, this was the divine realm. It recovered quickly, and the most important thing was that the simplicity of the people was strong enough. If it was any other world, they would have to deal with internal and external troubles at the same time. Even their ashes would be blown away in a matter of minutes. Speaking of that period, they had yet to see Maple, Monarch Green, Jing Yuanji, and Little Qingzi. He was the only one who led a group of people to go on expeditions. I brought up a sad story. Those guys back then, God knows where they went after going around in circles in the path of reincarnation. More than a dozen years had passed, and they still hadn't seen them. Sigh, but there were too many troublesome things in this world. It was already difficult to be a human being in this life, let alone in this even more dangerous time, the war between order and chaos. Now that they had come to the human realm for a stroll, they shouldn't come back in the next life. Even if they wanted to come back, they should wait for a while until the troublesome things here were over. They had plenty of time to wait. Although it was said that there was only one group of people, it was still a rather large group of people in the divine realm. However, at that time, they were not the best, and their speed of development was not fast. If they really want to talk about when they started to develop rapidly, it should be after they met Maple. They picked up the number 1 killer weapon in the void, and from then on, they had a smooth journey. Not long after that, they met Monarch Green of the ancient imperial world. At that time, Monarch Green was still not the ruler of the ancient imperial world. He was just a reckless guy who chose to fight all over the world. He was also picked up by Yi Shiwen, and then he met Jing Yuanji. Little Qingzi was even later. They only met in the 49th and 50th years. Jing Yuanji, this girl, where did they meet at that time? He did not remember much. There were too many messy things. He only remembered that she joined by herself. She knew him and Maple very early, just a little later than Monarch Green. It had been more than 10 years since then. But very, very inexplicably, she had been paying attention to Maple. He did not know when it started. In short, this girl had been paying attention to him. But Maple, this guy, seemed to only know that there was another person who was not bad on their side after several years. Clearly, he knew not long after Monarch Green came in. When these two people really began to talk to each other and started to know each other, Maple began to know Jing Yuanji. It was 5 years ago, which was the 51st era. Before that, it was only Jing Yuanji who knew and understood Maple. But Maple did not know that such a quiet girl was paying attention to him, nor did he pay attention to her. Every day, he still walked in a hurry. No one liked him when he covered his ears. This was the main reason why everyone knew that there was such a person as the observer but did not know much about it. On the other hand, Maple did not know many people in the past 10 years. Yes, he did it deliberately. He did it deliberately. He did not have feelings. His heart was cold. Well, just kidding. Now that he thought about it, he always felt that he had missed a lot of great opportunities. If he had brought these two together from then on, could he have been Maple's best man? Alas, he missed the best opportunity. There were so many opportunities before the 51st era, but he did not react at that time. In fact, when he found out that Jing Yuanji had some special feelings for Maple, it was quite a long time ago. It seemed that it was also in the 51st era. Then it's fine. No way. That girl hid her thoughts too deeply. Even now, she still hid them. Although she hid them, they did not completely hide them. At least 2/3 of the higher-ups knew about this. Did Maple himself know? Did not know? He felt that he should know. Not only Jing Yuanji, but he also knew the thoughts of the group of girls around him. The latter did not intend to hide it from the beginning. As for the reason why they did not respond, it was also mentioned that day. It was a very troublesome reason. Order would not stop, and the war would not stop. Perhaps they would not be able to wait until the end. At this time, his wish was just a pipe dream and empty talk. Back then, what happened back then? Phew. He did not know what happened to the first group of guys. Did their reincarnation go smoothly? Did they come back long ago? But even their souls had changed, and it was not easy for him to recognize them. Most of their cognition had been erased. Or they had not come back here yet, and were still busy in the reincarnation journey. Only a few of the big guys he knew before he met Maple were still alive. They had been following them, guarding the realm of the gods, conquering the void, and establishing the void frontline. Now, they were guarding the void frontline. They were the commander-in-chief of each node, and were all the higher-ups at the senior level. Hui suddenly showed a faint melancholy and sentimental expression, which was noticed by Yun Nuashing. He fiddled with the thing in his hand, glanced at Hui beside him, and whispered, thinking about the past. Oh, I suddenly thought of something. Hui scratched his head and sighed softly. Speaking of the realm of the gods, I would occasionally think of the past. Back then, a dozen eras passed just like that. Time! Everyone sighed inwardly. It was an eternal topic, and every time it was brought up, it would make people feel helpless or sad. Ahem. Feeling that the atmosphere had suddenly become a little gloomy, Hui coughed dryly and quickly changed the topic. Let's not talk about that. I was just thinking about the realm of the gods. I don't think I found any seal in the realm of the gods. That's normal. Yin Nuashing nodded. It's normal that we can't see the seal left by the heavenly god of origin. In fact, it's best not to let anyone see it. Otherwise, even if it's a seal they left behind, there might still be anomalies even if the probability of something happening is small. It's easy for something to go wrong if something important is placed in front of a naughty child. You could even break a locked door, let alone if it's placed in front of you so casually. The process of the void, in reality, will not move according to anyone's plan. You'll never know if something bad will suddenly appear in the realm of the gods and cause chaos in the world. That's true. We turned to look at Yin Nuashing and watched as he continued to fumble around with the big string of things. After thinking for a while, we continued to pull the things out of the ground and asked, "Do you know what these things are used for?" Yin Nuashing's fumbling paused for a moment and looked up at the sky. It was as if he was looking at the starry sky, but also as if he was staring at the void. Hui was familiar with this action of his. It was just a subconscious action of looking at the void, and he was thinking while staring. Although he felt that Feng was subconsciously looking for a target every time, he did not know where the target was. It was just a subconscious action. A dozen seconds later, Yin Nuashing lowered his head and said softly, "Seal. For now, I know that it's used for sealing, but I don't know what kind of seal it is. The higher the level and the higher the life form, the more forms it could take. But no matter what kind of seal it was, its purpose was mostly to stop enemies, whether they were dead or not." The seal itself was unreliable, and the meaning of its existence was to release a monster on the day the seal was broken. With what they knew now to deal with the higher levels, to put it bluntly, it was the seal that the gods of origins cast. It seemed to be by destroying rules, concepts, and cutting off the connection with the Yuan realm to achieve the purpose of blocking movement and preventing return. The former corresponded to them and was stripped of everything, then them could only stay at home for a dozen or so eras, including the next dozen eras. The latter corresponded to the concept bodies of chaos and was to prolong their resurrection. If nothing unexpected happened, these two methods had been in harmony until the 139th era. Whether them had come out in the middle of it was unknown, but it definitely did not happen in the ancient era. And judging from the records left by the beings in the realm of the gods, and its own records since the end of the Dark Age, the war between order and chaos seemed to have disappeared completely, as if it had never existed. From this aspect, the peaceful void of order that they had created for the sake of fulfilling the only wish of the order beings of the chaos era had fulfilled their wish. Even if it was a false peace, and even if order was busy with domestic violence when they were free, at least they did not have to be threatened by chaos all the time, right? That should be considered a good thing, right? Sigh. He was being serious. This kind of fake peace was really meaningless. It was like a cool breeze on a hot summer day. After cooling down for a while, one would still be as hot as a dog. Wasn't the best solution to this situation to use an umbrella to cool oneself down? Or shoot down the sun with an arrow? Cough, cough. This was just his crazy idea. Just treat it as a joke. His idea had always been very simple. He would kill all the guys who wanted to cause trouble in the samsara and decisively destroy them in the state of the Great Yuan realm. Then, there would be no more problems. But he had digressed. Let's talk about seals. Other than these two types of seals, the only seals that could be left behind were the seals used to suppress power. He had heard from them that they had a way to seal the power of chaotic concept bodies, but they did not have the time to do it in the battle at the end of the mythological era. Moreover, even if they did seal it, it would not last forever. Just as he had said, the seals existed to wait for the moment of breaking the seal. The restrictions in this aspect were about the same for both sides, and it was far more satisfying to seal after death. However, it was basically the chaotic concept bodies that were sealed. Whether it was weakened in different ways or using different methods to close the coffin lid after death, it was always the chaotic concept bodies that suffered the most. The heavenly god of origin and the others had not suffered much from these methods. In the beginning, they were also affected by similar situations, but as time went on, the so-called seals became more and more ineffective against them. He felt that it was purely because he had suffered too many losses and had developed a conditioned reflex to avoid the seal. He did not know how many similar incidents they had encountered at the beginning of the Chaos Era that allowed them to fully develop their resistance to the seal. Speaking of which, choosing to enter the path of reincarnation in a state of complete collapse seemed to be one of the methods they mentioned to avoid the seal. However, as a being who had reincarnated for hundreds of billions of lifetimes, he had used his own experience to prove that this method was a little unstable. When he died in a hurry and was completely unprepared, he had no idea where he would reincarnate to, nor how much his soul would be worn down by the reincarnation. This was something he had personally experienced. At the end of the Dark Age, he had entered the cycle of reincarnation with a cry, and had been tossing and turning. Well, from the beginning, although he was lucky enough to return to the realm of the gods in the next reincarnation, he was severely damaged by then. His appearance had changed, and his soul had split. Not only had he lost his memories, he had also lost some important knowledge about the realm of the gods and the Grand Yuan realm. Although he was still the observer engraved in the conceptual layer of the realm of the gods, and he was still himself, there had been some changes, and he was no longer complete. Even though he had returned to the realm of the gods several times in the subsequent reincarnations, and even though he had done everything he could to prepare himself, due to various reasons and reincarnations, his soul and knowledge continued to be damaged bit by bit. He had forgotten the entire Dark Age and the war between order and chaos. The entire process of forgetting lasted for almost 70 years, until he once again felt the abyssal death shroud in the void, and his broken soul was suddenly stimulated deeply, prompting him to awaken. A long awakening and a short awakening. But in order, it should be the 139th era, where he had pieced his soul together. Although he did not know why his soul had recovered on its own, it had indeed recovered. After the recovery of his soul, the structure and rules should have been restored as well. All that was left was to restore his memories, concepts, and knowledge. These were supposed to be a slow process of recovery, but halfway through, he unexpectedly encountered excessive stimulation. At first, he did not feel anything, and midway, he even went back to fight the abyssal death shroud in the past. But at that time, the degree of his awakening was not that bad. Based on the memories he had recovered and the memories he was experiencing now, the next time he returned to the 139th era, his soul might explode and something big would happen. Those could only be discussed when the time came. There was no time to talk about the future now. Seeing that Maple had suddenly spaced out, we could not help but walk up to him, wave his hand, and poked Maple's head with his finger. He waited until Maple's colorful eyes trembled slightly before he said, "What's wrong, Maple? Why are you spacing out all of a sudden? Did you think of something bad?" "Oh, I'm trying to figure out the problem of the seal." Yin Nuashing waved the rope in her hand and said to them, "The seals they told me about are either used to suppress the power of the conceptions of chaos, which can't be maintained for long. As they're of the same level, they can't be sealed forever. The other is used to suppress the process of their return, which is to prolong the time for them to open the coffin and rise. Although I've heard about these two kinds of seals, I haven't actually seen them, so it's hard to say." He pulled the rope in his hand, turned around, and said to Sui Feng and the others, "Do you have any recollection of this? Has Her Eminence ever mentioned something like this?" "Well, she did mention something similar in her spare time. It seems to be a seal based on the rules, concepts, and order of the environment of the Yuan realm. Generally speaking, it's not easy to break free, but it needs more details." Sui Feng scratched his chin and said, giving Maple a you-know-what-I-mean look. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes in response. Although she knew that it had nothing to do with whether they were reliable or not, it was purely because they were not at the right level at that time. It was probably useless to know about this in advance. She reckoned that they would have to wait until they reached the level of AI Hongyan to know about the dozens of seals that were used against the conceptions of chaos. At that time, they were still in the middle level of the premier, which was still too early. Then, they were packaged up, and there was no such opportunity anymore. Those who could teach them had all left and gone into the samsara. How could they have the time to do this? Oh, right. There was actually another type of seal, which was a temporary seal used in battle. It could be used to imprison and control the enemy for a short period of time. Just like his curse of sin, if he did not seize the right opportunity in battle, it would not be as effective as the other two types of seals. After all, it was used in a passionate and violent fight on the battlefield. Just look at the scene where he fought with the chaotic concept body sealed by AI Hongyan. He did not have the time to release seals, and he could not even release Curse of Sin. The Curse of Sin series of skills required at least 4 to 5 seconds of preparation, but he did not even have the time to spare, let alone 4 to 5 seconds. If he did not focus on increasing his combat strength to the limit and fight with the enemy, he would die instantly. There was no room for discussion. What a headache. We finally pulled out all the ropes buried deep in the ground. He turned around and threw them on the ground. He clapped his hands and turned to look at the pile of ropes in front of him. After a long silence, he said, "This thing is so big." The pile of ropes in front of him covered an area of about 10 feet and was about 4 to 5 meters high. It looked like a small hill. At this moment, the 6 of them were circling around the pile, trying to get some reaction from it. However, no matter whether it was him, Sui Feng, Maple, or the rest, they could not do anything. He was troubled because this was not his field at all. It was a complete blind spot in his knowledge. However, seeing that Maple and the rest were working so hard, he did not want to take advantage of it. So, he could only pretend to work hard to pull the ropes out. Now that everything was out, what else could he do? The girl in white said, faintly, "Unknown creation, 0 energy." 0 energy? This thing can't be a one-time consumable, right? We scratched his head. There's almost no energy reaction at all. The remaining energy that can be sensed is actually nothing more than the aura of the creation itself. Perhaps there's still a portion of the power of order and natural law that's still active. There might even be some concept-level power. Yin Nuashing pulled the rope with both hands and tried to break it a few times. But the energy is actually not a big problem. As long as it is not damaged and is still a creation of origin, we can use it. It's just a matter of how effective it is. Yin Nuoxing's eyes flashed when she said this. After a while, she suddenly raised her eyebrows and walked towards Hui while holding the rope with both hands. She said very softly, "Speaking of which, I have a good idea to try. After that, we don't have to waste time here." The wind chime sound of the taut rope entered their ears. The words that seemed to have a hidden meaning and made everyone shudder. They turned their heads stiffly and saw an observer pulling the rope with a pretended gloomy smile on her face. She looked down at Hui and said something that made everyone break out in cold sweat. "Hui, stand there, don't move, or I won't be able to hit you." Hui jumped up immediately. Cold sweat dripped down his face like water. His pupils reflected a figure that was getting closer and closer, accompanied by a deep and sinister smile. Huey's breath froze. "Don't come over here." After a shrill scream, the world became quiet. Sui Feng moved his hands away from his eyes and saw Feng twirling the long rope around his hands. The rope floating above his palms emitted a colorful glow as if it had a life of its own. Even the rope piled up behind him was emitting a glow of energy as if it wanted to move. Hui Jun was lying on the ground, lifeless. What's the result?" Sui Feng carefully walked over to Feng and asked. As he asked, he glanced at Hui Jun, who was prostrating himself on the ground, and could not help but gulp. He was definitely fine. These two bad friends knew when to stop. Although Hui Jun looked pitiful, there was no one in the void of order who could take a beating better than him. Thus, he was not worried that Hui Jun would be in trouble after being sealed. He felt that Hui Jun would still be able to jump out after being hit by the Staff of Creation with 40% of its energy. Although he looked really pitiful and often acted as a target or a dummy. Yin Nuoxing looked at the robe in her hands. After about 2 minutes, she deliberately looked away and glanced at Hui Jun, who was pretending to be dead on the ground. She then turned to Sui Feng and said, "It's the last situation. It's a seal that can be used in battle." Brother Lei walked over and poked the back of his head. He was a little troubled. "It's a good thing if used well, but if not, it'll kill you." "What's the specific effect?" "Like the Staff of Creation and the Staff of Origin, it can't be used normally." At the mention of this, Yin Nuoxing's face showed that she had expected it. She then sighed and said with a look of disdain, "The thing is intact, but its energy is completely drained. After all, it's used to deal with the concept of chaos, so it must be a one-time charge. But actually, it's still fine. It only needs a one-time charge, and a one-time release of energy. Although it will take a little effort to use it, it won't be too much. It's a little easier than using the Staff of Origin and the Staff of Creation. Although it can't be used normally, it should be able to use 70 to 80% of its power. As for the specific effect," Yin Nuoxing paused and turned to look at them. She even raised an eyebrow at them. "It can probably seal it completely. I don't know how long it will take." Everyone was speechless. "You're winking as if you already know when you don't know." Yin Nuoxing shrugged. "I tried it just now, and it only took me 1 second to pin Hui on the ground. Using the power of a target of the same level, it would take me at least 3 or 4 seconds to fully charge it. So, we can gather a big one, bind it for 3 or 4 seconds, and then send it away." Sui Feng proposed a simple conjecture. Yin Nuoxing nodded and changed her tone. "Or we can bind it for 3 or 4 seconds and run away." Everyone was speechless. We're encountering the concept of chaos, aren't we? We don't know who's going to beat who up, and we might not even use it to attack. If we do, we might just pin it down and run away. Chapter 1920. Seals. Things like seals would always remind him of bad things, be it those left behind by his own people or those left behind by his enemies. The former made him realize that there might have been some bombs stored in the void that he did not know when they would detonate, and he would easily forget about those bombs as time passed. For example, the chaos concept bodies that were still busy channeling in the chaotic void were probably all in a sealed state, but there was no telling when they would collectively lift their coffins. Speaking of seals and lifting their coffins, He thought of the large group of world-class life forms in the divine realm, and his blood pressure instantly soared. As for the latter, he generally had a headache, because the seals left behind by his enemies were too sturdy and could not be removed even if they wanted to. If there was something sealed, it would be better if they could dismantle it, and if it was something more troublesome instead of what they thought it was, all they had to do was to press the nails back into the coffins, and after that, add another 180 layers of seals to pack it up and send it away. Tugging at the rope in his hand, Yin Nuoxing frowned slightly. He was more worried that the thing had been distorted and covered in a layer of chaos, turning into a weapon against them and order. With the precedent of the Horn of Order, there was no guarantee that other things would be covered in a layer of chaos as well. When that time came, it would not be the Staff of Origin or the Horn of Order, but the Staff of Chaos or the Horn of Chaos. Every time the Chaos Concept Body blasted the horn, the Chaos Concept Body would praise it, and then use the Staff of Chaos to attack them. He had already said that the things left behind by the heavenly god of Origin and the others were all used to increase the difficulty of order. Looking at these things, they were almost all used by chaos against order, and those guys were the biggest threat to order. What was that? TCH. Although he knew that they were already in a bad situation, he could not help but say a few words. He was now dealing with this mess while enduring the extra difficulty they had added, and it should not be a problem for him to say a few words. If there was a problem, they could jump out and ask him, and he would be there anytime. If it really turned into the power of chaos, as you said, and it's also a sealing power. Brother Lay's expression changed 3 times when he said this. In the end, his expression settled on a more worried expression. Then, there's really a big problem. When the battle became white-hot, it used this power to tie up our general and hang him in the void. Everyone shuddered, with Hui also getting up from the ground and looking up at Maple. Everyone gulped. Well, it was used to torment him. But if they thought about it carefully, Hui, who was in charge of the overall situation, was suddenly strung up. That would be really bad, and it would be a devastating blow to them. Yin Nuoxing pointed at himself speechlessly and rolled his eyes. So this is the only thing that is specifically targeted at me? Maybe the other side saw that we were too weak and did not bother to prepare this thing. Sui Feng scratched his head and laughed dryly. There's no need to use a butcher's knife to kill a pig, is there? We're all weak chickens in the eyes of the underworld and them, so there's obviously no need to use this thing against us. But it's more likely to be used against the defenses of the divine realm. It's better to be safe than sorry, Hui muttered as he got up from the ground. Even if the thing the heavenly god of Origins left for them is covered in a layer of annihilation energy and become a chaos creation, its power would be reduced. But as long as it's still effective, it's dangerous, very dangerous. Oh, Maple, do you have a second life? Yin Nuoxing glared at him. What do you take me for? Do you want me to perform a show of dying on the spot and then coming back to life? Even the heavenly god of Origins couldn't do that when it was fighting against chaos concept bodies, right? Complete collapse isn't something that can be recovered just like that. Energy life forms are inherently resistant to beatings, and that's why it's troublesome if they're accidentally destroyed. Complete collapse is the rhythm of the path of reincarnation, and there's no way to resurrect. I'm not worried. I'm worried that you'll suddenly be stabbed in the back and be gone. Hui laughed dryly, shrinking his neck. Yin Nuoxing's expression stiffened as he looked troubled. It was really difficult for him to survive. It was not that it was difficult for him to survive a stab in the back or a sneak attack, but the seal was difficult for him to survive. It was as difficult as what he had said in the beginning. Judging from the strength of the seal, the heavenly god of Origins had let them use it to suppress chaos concept bodies. If such a level of seal was accidentally placed on him, then he would be gone, really gone, definitely gone, and he would definitely not be able to survive. When he activated rule, order, energy form, and went on a killing spree on the battlefield while attracting 99% of the enemy's attention and hatred, a sign suddenly lit up and forced him to stop. Even if he had only paused for a second, the boundless energy bombardment from all directions would have buried him. Even if he had maintained this form at that time, coupled with the initial light, origin energy, and world core to strengthen his defense to a level equal to Huey's or even slightly higher for a short period of time, he still could not stand the stimulation of standing still while being focused on by the enemy. He was the one who beat people up, not the one who was responsible for being beaten up. Asking him to stop and be beaten up or something like that. He might as well use origin, chaos, to annihilate all the energy that was pouring on him. Hey, Feng, I told you to practice your defense a long time ago. Look at you now, you're having a headache. Hui looked at his troubled face and could not help but lean over and poke his cheek. He said with a smile, Come, there's still time. Practice your defense with me for 2 days. Yin rolled his eyes at him and tightened the down quilt on his body. He sighed and said, I'm not doing it. I'm only responsible for attacking. It's enough to replace my defense with attacking. Do you think I need to defend when I'm using rule, order, energy form? But isn't there a little accident right now? It's impossible to guard against the enemy when they don't talk about martial ethics. It'll be bad if you're really strung up. Hui spread his hands and sighed. Although I know that you're especially good at fighting and dodging in that form, scatter the enemy's attack together with the enemy's attack so that no attack will land on your body or something like that. There's still a 1 in a million chance that you'll be strung up. This. Yin pretty face immediately wrinkled up, sealing him from moving or something. Just thinking about it made his head hurt, so much so that it was about to split open. Suddenly he glanced at Hui, and his mind was filled with good fortune. His thoughts gushed out like a spring. With his hands on his hips, he lightly shouted at him, Can't you just block it for me? This. Huey's face turned pale for a moment, but then he recovered immediately. He thought of his experience for so many years. Wasn't it always Feng who was beating people up in front while he was in front of them to block their attacks? Although most of the time, it was him who carried the shield to chase after Feng who was charging furiously. And the more irritable Feng was, the harder it was for him to catch up. In the end, those attacks were either blocked by himself or flung off by extreme speed. When he really needed to use his shield, most of the time, he would just stand there and fight with the enemy with all his strength. In short, this answer was not unexpected at all. Okay, it seems like there's no problem. As long as we're not attacked by hundreds of high-level yuan shi for more than a minute, we can drag you away and escape. Yin also nodded. As long as the seal doesn't last for more than 10 seconds, we can get rid of them together with their attacks. Hearing the two of them echoing each other, Sui Feng and the others couldn't help but facepalm. What a pair of guys with a tacit understanding. Taking a beating and hitting people were already so detailed. Then, the shock and crisis brought about by the emergence of the relic of origin seemed to be over. It's not completely over, but there's nothing to talk about for now. Yin turned back and nodded at Sui Feng and the others before pulling the rope twice. It's impossible to analyze a creation of this level. Anyway, let's charge it first and test the seal's maximum power. Don't be so nervous. Even if a relic of origin has offensive capabilities, it wouldn't be ridiculously powerful. It's not worth it for them to add offensive capabilities to the seal. Instead of putting some harmless attacks into the seal, it's better to focus on strengthening the seal's effect. Once they've tied up the target, they can then focus on accumulating a powerful attack to get rid of the chaos concept entity in one go. Why would they need to squeeze their attacks into the seal and occupy some space? It's not worth it if they're just a few milliseconds away from escaping, right? That's true. Sui Feng and the others were at a loss. They had been following little brother Feng around with the origin relic for a long time, and after seeing all kinds of tragic things, they were worried that the god's creations would suddenly go crazy. Although little brother Feng was the one who would suffer the most after going crazy, it was precisely because of this that they were so nervous. They had to deal with a lot of things right now, and without him, everything would have to stop. From a friend's point of view, they also hoped that they wouldn't send him to the spiritual temple for no reason. Although little brother Feng was already used to going through life and death situations and shouting, "The Observer exploded," to the void front line would cause everyone to express their concern and sigh. This was Sir Feng's daily life and whatnot. But in the end, it was still inappropriate. Yes, it was best not to have an accident as much as possible. If something really happened, they would have to think of a way to offset the cost. Otherwise, what else could they do? They could only go to the spiritual temple every few days to see how long it would take for that unlucky guy to wake up. Yin Nuashing put away a large pile of ropes and poured a little origin energy into it to activate it. A colorful light flashed, and the pile of ropes on the ground suddenly shrunk into a 2-meter-long chain with the width of a hand. Its hue was still the same as the shallow layer of the void, and there were many things that looked like runes and marks on its surface. Is this the true form? Brother Lei stepped forward curiously and shook the chain. He frowned slightly and was lost in his memories. This seems to be a creation made with the rule power of that venerable god. Which venerable god is it? Who is it? Who is it? Little Shir and Sister Qing. Do you remember them? Yin Nuashing turned to look at the two girls in white. But this time, little Shir, who seemed to be the most reliable of the second-generation inheritors, was at her wit's end. She looked at Yin Nuashing and shook her head. It's a god who has little contact with us. We rarely see each other. I only have a faint impression of him. Sui Qing thought for a moment and helped to answer. It seems to be a god who is good at soul. Soul? Yin Nuashing frowned and lowered his head to look at the chain. Soul, if it was a creation made from the laws of origin of the heavenly god of origin, the domain it targeted should also be the soul. In other words, was it a seal targeted at the soul? This is bad. He had a bad feeling. It was worse than when he fought with the chaos concept entity. He might have to spend some time to study this thing. With the average power of the heavenly god of origins and the others, they were all at the peak of their respective domains in the world of order. After all, they were the origins of order. Unlike the staff of origin and the staff of creation, which were pure and powerful weapons, this creation that seemed to be used for sealing, although there were other origin energies mixed in it, the energy that belonged to this soul god was obviously the majority. This was a creation of origin that specifically targeted the soul. It was the first time they had come across such an origin creation that targeted the soul. It was the first time they had encountered such a creation. However, the fact that it was indirectly obtained from them did not make him happy. On the contrary, he now had a headache as if it was going to split open. Ah, your face is gloomy again. Hui poked his face. What are you thinking about now? It's still the same question. Yin Nuashing raised the chain in his hand and said softly, "This is something created by the heavenly god of origins who specializes in souls, and its effect is most likely targeted at the soul. I'm wondering if this is the main reason why it can seal the chaos concept entity. However, I don't know what aspect it uses to seal the chaos concept entity. If it uses annihilation energy or chaos energy to seal the soul directly, I'm afraid that this thing will be extremely effective on me." Huey's face immediately stiffened. He still remembered that Maple had 2 types of annihilation energy on him. The existence of these 2 types of energy always made him feel as if Maple would be summoned by the chaos concept entity in the next second. Maple would then declare, "I'm willing to join the chaos void," and in the next second, grab the nether void sword and slap him into nothingness. This thing is so troublesome. I can't be that unlucky, right? However, if them put a layer of chaos energy on it, and it works on the origin energy instead. Yin Nuashing thought of another possibility, and her pretty face immediately twitched. Hui and the others laughed dryly. Wouldn't that be even more serious? This is probably a super multiplier. A body of 147 types of origin energy. If this ring of seal were to smash down, he would probably lose his ability to fight on the spot, and they would have to abandon their armor and flee with him. Well, regardless, it's troublesome. Order would work on order as well, but it's not as effective against chaos as it is against chaos. It would be best if it could still maintain the state of order, but I just have 2 types of annihilation energy. I don't have the rules of chaos order on me, and the impact would not be as great as it directly affects origin energy and origin rules. Clenching the chain in her hand, Yin Nuashing sighed and threw it into the sea of energy below. She watched as it splashed with a splash and was dragged down by the sea of energy, and sighed. Let recharge first. Regardless, this thing has appeared before us, and it's time to consider that aspect. Yes, this is a huge flaw in my path, and it's time to talk about defense. Everyone inhaled, their faces filled with shock and astonishment. She was actually thinking about defense. Shouldn't she be arming the entire Void front line with the power of the god of destruction, and then lead the charge, annihilating everything along the way, and exploding endless energy fireworks in the Void with origin? Chaos? She was actually thinking about defense in the Void front line? Hui retreated and leapt before Sui Feng and the others, raising the Guardian's shield. Who goes there? Why are you occupying Maple's body? Come out and fight me. Yun Nuoxing's blood pressure instantly rose, and she swung her hands to draw the Nether Void sword and the rhythm of light. Come, Kummel. Don't run if you have the guts to fight me. Sui Feng and the others watched as a certain Guardian ran away like the wind, and they did not know whether to laugh or cry. The two of them were really familiar with bickering. By the time Hui came back, Yun Nuoxing had already put away her two swords. She rolled her eyes at him and began to explain. Didn't I see that the heavenly god of origin who specializes in the soul had created something that is very threatening to me? Now I have to think about the matter of defense. Although it may be useless to think about defense when facing those things, but when we are charging at full force. The method that the underworld uses to restrict us, it's better to reduce it as much as possible. Besides, this isn't just a battlefield for me alone. I have to lead all the warriors of order to charge at the front line. I have to consider the attack of the other warriors. No, the problem of defense. Everyone thought, this guy really does have the heart to charge and attack. Defense and whatnot are just topics he casually brought up. Hearing him talk about offense subconsciously, it was obvious, as expected of him. Sui Feng coughed dryly and skipped over the part about Maple's slip of the tongue. When it comes to defense, well, the current defensive measures are more or less enough. The main source of defense for the Realm of Order is the Temple of Origins and the complementary Realm of Order. When the time comes and the Fortress of Origins is added, the defensive level of the Realm of Order would be raised to another level. But whether it can withstand the test of a high-tier premier, that would require personal experimentation. Apart from that, well, soul defense is also very important. But I'm not talking about that thing. By the way, Brother Maple, how big is the range of this thing? Yun Nuoxing glanced at the sea of energy. It's only effective against a single target. In theory, it's used against the chaos concept entity, and it's basically impossible to seal a group at once. Oh, that's true. Then we'll ignore that thing. Sui Feng nodded and waved his hand. We don't have to be wary of the origin relic left behind by the honored gods. What we need to be wary of is, it's a large-scale defense, and we still need to be wary of the chaos conceptual entity. Brother Maple, although you've just activated the world core of the continent of origins and gained an unstable concept class barrier, it's not enough to protect the entire Void frontline. Apart from using the barrier to neutralize concept class powers, you also have to defend against souls. A large-scale defense is good, but apart from that, you might have to prepare individual soul defenses. After all, everyone's situations are different, and a group barrier alone isn't enough. Hui grimaced at that. Is it that troublesome to deal with the chaos concept entity? Troublesome? No, it's life-threatening. Brother Lei pinched his own face with a pained expression. Even with the net of order and origin set up by the gods to defend against the chaos concept forms back in our era, it could not withstand more than 50% of the chaos concept forms. And I'm referring to the defensive effect. We were basically luring the wolf into the house, forcing them into the real world and depriving them of a small portion of their abilities that might be insignificant before fighting each other. But even under such circumstances, once they spread their chaos domain, Hui purposely paused as if he was recalling something. Looking at the slightly ugly faces of the four, Hui knew that this was definitely the most fatal problem. large area of effect, domain, and soul defense. These things could only be described as fatal when put together. After waiting for a while, Brother Lay's answer was as he expected. When the chaos domain unfolds, if her eminence is not present, the net of order and origin that covers the entire void of order can only resist less than half of the chaos corruption. The remaining half is enough to make everyone, from the peak of primeval to the beginner primeval, who are affected by the chaos domain, fall into a state of chaos and losing control of themselves for a long time. We said, if one is soaked in the chaos domain for too long, the collapse of the soul would be a minor issue. If a being of order could not hold on, order would be distorted and become a chaos spawn. Not a chaos soldier, but a type of spawn that is entangled and controlled by chaos energy and chaos rules. The power of order and chaos would be entangled for a short period of time, and the energy would become violent. It is not particularly difficult to deal with, just a slightly strengthened and violent version of the chaos soldier. However, it came from our base, and it suddenly appeared when all of us were under the extremely powerful suppression effect of the chaos domain. Generally, when the chaos domain spreads, only offensive creations like your energy towers could cooperate to attack the chaos concept entity or guard the realm of order. Even so, they cannot hold on for too long. If the chaos concept entity is not pulled out of the chaos domain, there is no way to end the domain, and they would continue until the entire node collapses. Yin Nuoxing's eyes twitched. What do you mean by pull out? Sui Feng looked at him and said, when the concept form of chaos performs the domain of chaos, it will expose itself as the core. When the time comes, the soldiers of chaos, the derivatives of chaos, and the constructs of chaos will charge out of every part of the domain. They will no longer be a disciplined army, as you know, but a bunch of, just like the abyssal death mist right now. They're brainless things that only know how to attack crazily. Under normal circumstances, when the chaos concept entity uses the chaos domain without her eminence's protection, that node would basically be considered to be gone. So far, the only place that had an accident was where Brother AI and the others were guarding, but they had to pay the price of a quarter of the power of order to break the chaos domain. Sui Feng squeezed out the last few words with difficulty. Yin Nuoxing stroked the feathers on his head and said calmly, "Come, look at me. Tell me the truth. Don't try to scare me." All right, it's suppressing the chaos domain of the chaos concept entity. It's definitely not destroying the chaos domain. It seems like it's using order energy and origin energy to, I don't know what it's doing, but it took a long time to force the chaos concept entity to withdraw the chaos domain. Sui Feng covered his face with a bitter smile. You can think of it as sacrificing a quarter of the power of the defensive line in exchange for the closure of the chaos domain. Actively closing and breaking a domain are two different things, and only Her Eminence could guarantee that they would be able to break the chaos domain. The others would be fine as long as they do not cause trouble. The domain of chaos is the most difficult to deal with. From the moment they used the domain of chaos, the entire node entered its most dangerous state. From the time we were thrown in and wrapped up, from what we knew at that time, none of the nodes could last more than 20 minutes in the domain of chaos. However, Big Brother AI and the others repelled the domain of chaos. Why do I feel that it's impossible to defend against it? He wiped his forehead that was drenched in cold sweat and gulped. Even with the help of the concept class barrier and all existing defenses, we still can't hold it off. We can't stop it. That kind of corruption is penetrative. Even if we hide behind the barrier, we can't completely negate the effects of chaos corruption. Let me put it this way. It's equivalent to dragging our current void into the most dangerous part of the void of chaos. Together with the environmental laws of the entire void of chaos, it will wipe out all beings of order within. Sui Feng gasped and said, "That's like dragging the entire chaos void and smashing it on our heads. We really can't hold it off. Even if the gods were present, all of us would have to give up on attacking and focus on defense to almost negate the effects of the chaos domain. It's only when the gods are present that the chaos erosion could not transform beings of order. We have to wait for the gods to break the chaos domain before we can resume our attacks. However, the damage caused by the chaos erosion may take some time to recover. It's a long time for war, and before we fully recover, we may only be able to unleash 80 or 90% of our original power. We can't unleash powerful attacks that we can only unleash when we're in peak condition. So, with our current defensive measures, if the underworld really brings out a chaos concept body, it's over, it's all over. Hui and Yinuashing didn't doubt the information brought by Sui Feng and the others. Because of this, both of them were sweating profusely. Fortunately, they encountered the soul chains, which reminded them that they still had to deal with the defense. If they started charging with thousands of swords without a single shield, they would be stopped by the entire army before they could even take 2 steps forward. Then they would be pinned down in the void and beaten up. But even if they knew, how should they deal with the damned chaos domain? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.